Chapter 526. While inwardly cursing his bad luck, Lith explained to her how he had devised the mystical flower so that it needed to be repeatedly imprinted to not wither. Marvelous. A magical item that needs to be tended, making the person who receives it think about the gift giver every time they recharge it. That's the most romantic betrothal gift I have ever seen. Silpha said, staring at Camilla's wrist in admiration, making both her and Lith wish the ground would swallow them whole. It's not a betrothal gift. I made it as a spur-of-the-moment gift for our second date. I told you it was too much for a second date. Solus interrupted his inner swearing monologue. I never expected to be discussing my love life with the queen. Why doesn't everyone mind their own business? He replied, You are a very lucky woman to inspire such deep feelings after only one date. Silpha kept stirring it, making the matter become worse by the second. My thoughts exactly, Your Majesty. I couldn't believe it when Kalyan Nuragor dared to call it a trinket. Journey was unaware that the ship she was attempting to sink already rested on the bottom of the ocean. His heart must be as rotten as his eyes to say such a thing. Isn't that right, dear? The king obviously agreed, and as soon as the guest learned about the royal's opinion on the camellia, it became unanimous that Lith was a sensitive soul and Kalyan the scum of the earth. Silpha and Journey were happy to introduce Camilla to some of their most notable supporters. They boasted both her lovely appearance and the camellia, making her wish a sudden meteor could put her out of her misery. Don't worry. Journey will take good care of her. Orion said, while dragging Lith to the ballroom with the excuse that he needed his help to finish the final preparations before making the guests move there and commence the gala. I know we have never been exactly on the best terms. Orion sighed. I'm too jealous of my daughters, and I've often acted like a jerk to you. For that, I'm deeply sorry. Orion gave Lith a deep bow, making his eyes open wide in surprise. The past is in the past. It's no big deal. Lith's paranoia got knocked into 12th gear, expecting Orion's next move to be asking him to dump Camilla and get back with Floria. No, it is a big deal. You saved my wife's life and other more than once, and now you have rejuvenated us both. I suck with words almost as much as you do, so I've prepared a gift for you, Spellbreaker Verhen. Lith inwardly smiled at those words. Like any manipulator, he liked to be underestimated. Also, receiving a gift from a forge master as powerful and skilled as Orion was twice the treasure. He had learned more about forge mastering from Orion's weapons than from most books. Orion took out a ring from his pocket dimension and handed it to Lith. What does it do? Lith used invigoration on it, discovering he had never seen a pseudo-core like it had. The ring was shaped like a coiling dragon, and it was made of electrum, an amber-colored alloy of gold and silver. It had a small purple crystal embedded in a socket between the dragon's folded wings. Invigoration revealed that the ring's surface was covered by unknown runes of power, making Lith's curiosity kick up a notch. It's a cloaking device for your ring. Or should I say your secret artifact? Orion pointed at Solus's ring. Lith didn't even attempt to deny his allegation. His mind was running all the possible scenarios from how Orion discovered their secret to his chances of killing the man if push came to shove. If he knows, Journey knows. There's no telling what contingency plan she has prepared or what kind of arrays are surrounding us. He thought. We noticed it the first time when we were fighting Nailier, but we thought it was just something you kept in your dimensional amulet. At least until Journey saw it shape-shift before you fought Thrud. Orion pretended not to notice Lith's shock and his cornered animal gaze, talking like everything was normal. I'm sorry, Solus thought. Back then my priority was our survival, yet I shape-shifted only when I thought everyone was too busy staring at Thrud to notice. You did nothing wrong, Solus. We wouldn't even be alive if not for your choice. Besides, it doesn't seem like they want to blackmail us. Months have passed since that day, and Orion is giving us a gift instead. Lith replied. I don't know where you found it, but since according to my daughters you have always had it with you, I must assume you have found some legacy hidden in the Tron woods when you were still a nameless hunter. Backslash. It was the only possible theory he could think of which explained both Litha's mastery of magic and him possessing a mysterious artifact. Orion waited for a second, giving Lith the opportunity to answer, yet he was only met with silence. Backslash. Whatever the answer, you can't just go around with that thing on your finger. If someone finds out about its existence, best case scenario they'll steal it from you. Artifacts capable of changing their size to such a degree usually hold great powers. Backslash. It could tempt many to the point that they would be willing to face the wrath of the royals to have it. Also, you're not a shut-in. There are beings out there that don't care about the association or the army, like the undead courts. Backslash. Backslash. Why are you doing this? Backslash. Lith moved his eyes from the ring to Orion non-stop, like he expected one if not both of them to sucker punch him. Backslash. Kid, you really are a piece of work. Backslash. Orion sighed. Backslash. I told you, you saved my daughters and my wife more than once. That means the world for someone like me, even for Journey. Maybe we'll never be in-laws, but you earned your place in this family, and the Ernas protect their own. Backslash. Lith imprinted the ring to make sure it was really without a master and not some kind of slave item. Backslash. How does it work? Backslash. Lith asked. Backslash. It's standard Black Ops equipment for those who carry weapons which are not supposed to exist. It suppresses the magical aura of an item, making it undetectable to most creatures and artifacts capable of sensing magic. Backslash. Silver is great for forge mastering. Gold is terrible, but if you mix them together the resulting alloy is capable of conducting magic like silver, but prevents it from leaking outside thanks to the gold's disrupting nature. Backslash. Backslash. Do all alloys have special effects? Backslash. Lith slipped the ring on right in front of Solas's. Backslash. You wish. Only some of them, and only if used in the right proportions. This kind of knowledge is imparted only from master to apprentice. You'll not find any of this in any book unless as part of a mage's legacy. Backslash. By my maker. Solas's mana sense confirmed Orion words and revealed more. It's actually even better than he says. My aura has disappeared, and you appear to have a yellow mana core, a static one at that. Do you mean that? Yes. The hairpin Martianist Distar wears is not meant to hide her mana core. That's logical if you consider fake mages can't see mana cores, or they wouldn't even perform the Academy's entrance test. She hides some kind of weapon on herself. The cloaking of her mana core is just a side effect. Chapter 5:27. Okay, it can hide your magical aura. What about your life force? Lith couldn't believe his own ears. So far everything was too good to be true. That's what you have to tell me. Solas sneered. We must see if it shields me from outside detection. My invigoration is bound to work on myself. Lith focused on his breathing technique and discovered that just like Solas had predicted, his mana core still appeared to be deep blue to him, while Solas's had disappeared. Her life force, however, was still there. Tiny, almost invisible, but still there. Damn it. Almost only works with nukes and grenades, but at least it's a start. Lith thought. I never thought the day would come where you would see the glass as half full. Solas chuckled. Now I'm curious about what kind of weapon the Martianess always carries with herself. Yet that was a question for another day. Backslash. Thanks, Orion. Does it have any other properties I should know about? Backslash. Lith was truly grateful, but he kept looking around like a trapped animal. Backslash. Stop looking around like a trapped animal. Damn it. I'm offering you my sincere gratitude, and I'm also violating several laws by giving you such a magical treasure without official authorization. Backslash. If anyone finds out, they would take away your ring, and I would be executed. The least you could do is trust me a little bit. Backslash. Orion blurted out in exasperation. Backslash. Also no. It doesn't have any other purpose. Gold is such a pain in the ass that even with the purple mana crystal and a whole network of runes, one spell is all it can hold without crumbling. Backslash. Lith looked at the coiled dragon at his finger. He was so moved by Orion's gesture that he almost set aside his paranoia. Almost. Backslash. Why are you doing so much for me? Binding your fate to mine is too much. You never liked me, and our relationship is shallow at best. Backslash. Backslash. You're right. Our relationship is shallow. Journey, however, almost cares for you like a son and my little flower. Backslash. Well, That's not up to me to tell. I know she would lose a big piece of her heart if something happened to you. And another one if she discovers that I could have prevented it, yet I didn't do anything. Backslash. Orion's big heart baffled Lith more than his reincarnations did. He couldn't understand how someone like Journey could love such a softie. Lith loved his mother, yet he wouldn't hesitate to kill Orpal or Tryon if they ever posed a threat to his family, no matter how important they still were to her. How he could risk so much to protect his family's feelings rather than just their safety was beyond Lith. Backslash. I gladly accept your gift and your gratitude. Backslash. Lith replied. Backslash. There's not much I can offer you, but if there's anything I can do to return the favor, you just need to ask. Backslash. Backslash. Good gods. You're the spitting image of my wife back when we first met. It's not a gift if you pay for it. Anyway, while we are at it, Journey is about to ask you to become our family's healer. It would be nice of you to say yes. Backslash. Backslash. Are you kidding me? Quilla is almost as good as I am, and Freya is an excellent healer too. What do you guys need me for? Backslash. Backslash. Sadly, almost only works for fireballs and meteors. Backslash. Orion replied. Backslash. Manohar is unreliable, while you are the next best thing, and you are always just a call away. As our healer, no matter if you're in the army or the association, your patients come first. Backslash. We get priority in case of emergency, and you get a perfect excuse to visit whenever you want. It's a win-win. Think about it while I let my guests in. Backslash. Lith inwardly cursed as he remembered he had yet to set up the ballroom. The place was as big as a football field. Its floor was made of cream-colored marble. Together with the light brown walls, it gave warmth to the room and gave the light coming from the enchanted crystal chandeliers illuminating the room the same tinges real fire would. A small bandstand with a low wooden fence to separate it from the dancers had been prepared for the musicians near the east wall. Refreshment tables were lined up along all the other walls. Food and beverages were kept warm and cold by their magical containers. On the four corners of the room, there was a flight of stairs which lead to a balcony on the first floor, where sofas and armchairs were arranged around small tables for those who needed a place to rest, eat, watch others dance, or simply wanted to spend their time in conversation. Backslash. All this waiting and you have yet to start? I hope a major disappointment wasn't what you had in mind when you promised me a memorable evening. Backslash. Journey's expression while pouting was cute. Too cute, to the point that it gave Lith the creeps. Is this the effect I have on people when I go from friendly to homicidal in a heartbeat? Lith thought. Backslash. Perfection requires time. Also, I thought you would enjoy the show. Backslash. Lith lied through his teeth, fooling everyone but Journey. Backslash. How thoughtful of you. Floria, Cowlion, come here. Lith says we're in for a real treat. Backslash. Her fake enthusiasm held a tinge of cruelty while she called the couple and forced Lith to go beyond what he had originally planned. Floria was still holding Callion's arm, but her fingers were barely touching him. The coldness her plastered smile emanated could have easily turned Mogar into a frozen wasteland. Journey had just served him an opportunity to pay back Cowlion for his words and guaranteed herself that Lith would not spare any effort. Two birds with one stone. Lith accepted her challenge, raising his open hands while he took a deep breath. His shadow spread from his feet in every direction, like a black sun that engulfed the entire ballroom, turning it into twilight. A few millimeters thick layer of water covered the floor, quickly followed by a fine mist. Mogar had no underwear. Lith didn't want people to look under the lady's ball gown thanks to the reflection. Backslash. That's it. Backslash. Cowlion sneered. Backslash. First magic can hardly be considered a treat. It's a cheap trick just like that corsage. Backslash. He was unaware his words were not only demeaning Lith's skills, but also the queen's opinion. Rushes made of light sprouted from the floor as 6 different kind of flowers, one for each element, bloomed above the water. A silvery sphere enveloped each one of the chandeliers, turning them into small moons while small wisps appeared on the blackened ceiling like starlight. Backslash. Oh gods. If I didn't know we were inside my own home, I'd really think we're under the moon. Backslash. Journey walked above the water, discovering it wasn't slippery at all. She tried to touch the rushes and the flowers, but they were all ethereal. Backslash. I'm not done yet. A wave of Litha's hand made some of the flowers turn into small fairies that moved around the room as shooting stars darted across the fake night sky. Together, they formed a path of lights, leading the Urna's couple to the center of the stage where a giant reflection of the moon waited like a spotlight for them to open the dances. Well said, Mage Nuragor. It's just a cheap trick. Silpha's voice expressed all the joy she felt for being openly contradicted in front of such a large audience. I'm sure you can do much better. Chapter 528. Despite being calm and composed, the Queen's voice echoed throughout the whole ballroom thanks to both its perfect acoustics and a little air magic spell she added to make sure all eyes were on her victim. Her Majesty is right. Cowlion. Floria smiled warmly while hugging his arm, pretending that as his girlfriend she believed in his skills and words. You always tell me that back when you graduated from the academy, people called you the Lith of the Fire Griffin. This is the perfect occasion to show both my family and the royals what you are capable of. Cold sweat ran down Callion's spine as cruel remarks filled the room. What an idiot to blatantly slander the camellia again after the Queen praised it. Said a duchess, well aware that the fan she was using to cover her mouth couldn't muffle her voice at all. He's worse than an idiot. Said another noble dame that despite her human appearance Solus recognized as an undead from her blood core. There's no glory being called the Lith of the Fire Griffin. It means he is still considered inferior to the original. Otherwise they would call Lith the Cowlion of the White Griffin. In his shoes, I wouldn't flaunt such a title. Lith dissipated the illusion he had created with a snap of his finger, turning the fairy tale lake back into a luxurious but ordinary ballroom. How many first magic spells did you weave together, great mage Verhen? Queen Silpha emphasized every syllable of Litha's title. 15, Your Majesty. His words caused a small uproar among the guests, but Silpha only needed to raise her hand to make the room silent again. The crown praises your skill and relentless practice. A mage's worth can be measured by the number of spells they can cast. Anything else is just empty air. She turned towards Cowlion. Her gaze lost any trace of benevolence. Mage Nuragor, prove your worth. Cowlion barely held in the hatred he felt when he noticed that Floria was still smiling despite his evident distress. I hoped she had changed her mind about me, but that which was only digging me a deeper grave, he thought while taking a few deep breaths to calm down and focus his mind. He hadn't lied about his title back at the academy. Cowlion simply had never understood the implications of being compared to someone rather than being the benchmark. Darkness spread from his body, making the room become pitch black. Only after several attempts did he manage to make the shadows fade enough to see further than his own nose. He then conjured a thin layer of water that drenched everyone's shoes and gowns, making many curse his incompetence. After that, a thick fog appeared, which made the air humid and sticky. This seems more like a marsh than a lake. King Marone grunted as he used air magic to find some relief. The laughs following his remark made Cowlion lose focus, so that when he tried to imitate starlight, his light and darkness spells canceled each other. I'm not going to judge until I see the final result. I counted 4 spells, so you still have 11 to go. Silpha never averted her gaze, making him feel the full weight of her disdain. Cowlion did his best, but like most mages, he had always considered first magic irrelevant compared to tier 5 spells. His attempt to use a 5th spell, while he still had to keep active and balance the other 4, made them all disappear at once. A 2nd and 3rd attempt only resulted in more blatant failures and further humiliation. At every iteration, he was more tired and angry, until he couldn't take it anymore. I can't do it, Your Majesty. For is my limit. Cowlion fell to his knees incapable of looking the royals or his peers in the eyes. 4. The Queen echoed the word like it was an insult. Isn't first magic just a cheap trick? Isn't great mage Verhen just a maker of trinkets? How dare you belittle others when you're not even able to wield more than 4 spells at once? Backslash. Backslash. I can wield far more than 4. Backslash. Cowlion raised his head and hands, conjuring 8 different elemental effects on his fingers. Backslash. 8 would be great if those were not unlinked spells and all the size of a pinhole. Can you at least do this? Backslash. A Silverwing's hexagram the size of a handkerchief appeared above Sylpha's palm. It was the impossible array that had earned Lith his admission with honors at the White Griffin Academy when he was still 12. Cowlion and all of those presents understood the question underlying the Queen's words. Backslash. No. Backslash. Cowlion shook his head without even giving it a try. His spirit was already broken. Since another humiliation was unavoidable, he decided to make it last as little as possible. Backslash. So much for the Lith of the Fire Griffin. Backslash. Sylpha turned her back to him. Backslash. We've already lost too much time. Great Mage Verhen, it's your turn again. Backslash. Lith had devised many ways to humiliate Cowlion further, but since everyone was already kicking him while he was down, any more could have turned the spite into pity, so Lith only did as instructed. While Orion and Journey opened the ball by dancing the first waltz alone, Solus warned Lith about her discoveries. I've detected 4 undead and 1 awakened among the guests. Is Kalen among them? The vampire from Other was the first one who came to Lith's mind. He discarded the idea immediately, since attacking him in front of so many powerful mages was worse than suicidal. Both the king and the queen had purple mana cores, and many members of the house staff were actually elite warriors in disguise. No, Solus replied. I don't think they are here together, nor that they have an agenda. All they've done so far is mingle and gossip. I think they are just here to enjoy the gala. Any idea what kind of undead we're talking about? Lith asked while the royals joined the dance, quickly followed by the others. None. All I can say is that the undead duchess from earlier is the strongest among the 4. The other 3 are nothing compared to her. What about the awakened? Lith and Camilla joined the dance too, forcing him to add his own feat to the already long list of things he had to focus on. A woman in her mid-20s, but she could actually be much older. Blue mana core, so her magic should be a bit stronger than yours, but her physical prowess is inferior to yours. I wonder why all the awakened we meet have this trait in common. Solus pondered. Probably because I awakened at birth. Even if they were born with better mana cores than mine, my body has been refined while it developed, whereas there's need to slowly adapt. Backslash. Are you sure you can afford to dance? Backslash. Camilla's worried voice interrupted their mind link. Backslash. Keeping so many spells active at once must be excruciating. I've never seen you with such a stern expression. Backslash. She wasn't far from the truth. Lith could either speak with Solus or with her. He didn't have the strength to do both. Chapter 529. Backslash. I don't care what we do. As long as we are together, it's a date to me. Backslash. Camilla moved her right hand from Lith's shoulder to his cheek, caressing it gently. That simple gesture filled him with joy. Backslash. Thanks, but there's no need for that. I was just thinking about how lucky I am to have you in my life. Backslash. His smile and words made Camilla's heart pound. Lith wasn't one for sweet talk. He would only say such things when he meant them. Lith took a deep breath, using invigoration to replenish part of his mana and release death vision from its fetters. In his eyes, the entire ballroom turned into a grotesque nightmare where rotten corpses danced amid blood spatters. He tried not to look around, focusing only on Camilla's smile. As long as she was between his arms, she was safe from death vision's effects. A beacon of life in a sea of dead bodies. If I don't suppress death vision, I've more than enough mental strength to do everything at once. Camilla deserves to enjoy her first gala without having to constantly worry about me, he thought. She's so sweet and unaware of all the bad things which happened to me in the past. When I'm with her, I can forget about everything but the present. Camilla is my second chance, my opportunity to start from scratch. The only silver lining of death vision was that it allowed Lith to immediately spot the undead among the crowd. They were the only ones that would not age nor die of poison or illness. They weren't paying any attention to him, so he was careful not to stare while using their deaths to discern their nature. One of them would oddly always die in the same way. Her disguise reverted into a desiccated corpse before it turned to dust. Yet there was no sign of spells or injury. Her body would simply collapse, as if the magic animating it was gone. As if a switch had been flipped. Another would only die when his head was destroyed or his heart pierced. After that, his body would turn into ashes. The other two seemed to be much easier to kill. No matter if by weapon or spell, when their bodies sustained enough damage, they would respectively turn into a pool of water and be set ablaze. Lith was wondering why the bestiary stored inside Solaspedia didn't include the details about what happened after destroying an undead when the music ended. That information would allow me to use Death Vision to identify them. Without it, I can only get a faint idea about their weak points. He inwardly griped. Between facing that cow lion jerk, meeting the royals, and being introduced to all those nobles like I'm some sort of a princess, I've really had too much excitement for one evening. I need a little rest. Camilla's cheeks were flushed red from the dancing, but she wasn't tired. She was just worried about Lith and was giving him an excuse to relax a bit. Lith understood her intentions immediately and accompanied her to the first floor, where they were offered food and drinks by the waiters. How do you feel? She prompted after asking the staff to move a chair near the balcony for him, so that he wouldn't lose visual contact with his spells, and with it the surgical control he had been exerting on them. Much better. Thanks. Her care moved Lith so deeply that he would have kissed her if the rules of etiquette didn't strictly forbid public displays of affection. You were right. I let my anger get the better of me. Maintaining 15 spells that interact with each other and the guests is a bit too much, even for me. He sighed as he moved the spotlight on the royal couple for the next dance. Why did you do it? That jerk isn't worth this much effort. Camilla switched his glass of wine with grape juice. Lith needed focus and energy, not to get drunk. But you are, he replied while taking a sip. After what he did to you. Mage Nuragor needed a royal beating. Lith had a hard time keeping the edge off his voice and his murderous impulses under control. His instinct had marked Cowlion as an enemy, and he wasn't used to giving them a second chance. Killing him was out of the question. Too many witnesses and too many arrays. More importantly, he didn't want to scare Camilla or his family. Some aspects of his life had to remain hidden. In the opposite corner of the room, the Erna's siblings were resting their feet. Between handling the preparations and welcoming their guests, it was their first opportunity in hours to sit. Floria was in no mood to dance. After a single dance as a formality, Cowlion had left the gala with the excuse of feeling ill. She had lost her date and her source of entertainment. Misery loves company, and Floria was no exception. Seeing his anguish at every snarky remark, he was the target of whenever they met another couple on the dance floor, was the only relief for her wounded pride. They had yet to get to the point where she started to plan their future together, but she had fallen for Callion's ruse enough that she had hoped there could be one. Freya had no date and was happier that way. Quilla was brooding because her boyfriend, Anathor, had not attended the gala, making her suspicion that he was just playing with her feelings even stronger. They also felt guilty for not defending Camilla when Cowlion had tried to embarrass her. Orion's words had stung, and even though Lith didn't add anything, his disappointed look spoke volumes. Usually, I wouldn't approve of that guy. Guneen, the eldest brother, pointed at Lith with his glass, tired of his sister's stealing glances at the couple and sighing. He's shorter than me and seems weaker than Dad, but compared to that other guy at least he has talent. I think you made a mistake letting so much time pass. Is this your opinion, or are you borrowing Mom's as usual? Floria rebuked. For once, I'm with the beanpole. Tullian, the profligate brother, was shorter than Floria. He was 1.73 meters tall with blonde hair and blue eyes. He had taken his looks from his mother's side, yet where his attitude came from was still a mystery. Of all the boyfriends you've had, I've never seen you as happy as when you and the little monster were together. You know I like people staying out of my personal life, just like I stay out of theirs. But I have to ask. What went so wrong that you decided on such a clean break? I mean, even Guneen can tell you still have feelings for him. Guneen nodded, not taking his brother's words as an insult so much as truth. He had been raised as the future lord, betrothed before he was 10 years old and married right after he came of age. His skills lay in numbers, business, and politics. Everything else was just a means to an end, the glory of House Ernest. Chapter 530. During my 4th year at the White Griffin, I only approached him because I needed a friend. I was tired of everyone around me, even my family, trying to turn me into the person they believed I was meant to be. Floria cast a hush spell to make sure no one would eavesdrop. Over time, I came to like Lith more and more, not because he was powerful or talented, but because he was the only one that saw me for who I was and accepted me anyway. He never cared if I always had a sword with me or if I wore pants instead of a dress. It was liberating after being weighed, measured, and found wanting all my life, no matter how much effort I put in. Aside from Quilla, they could all relate to her words. Belonging to a noble family meant a life of duty, and competing with everyone from birth, no matter if they were peers or family members. That was the reason why during the academy both Freya and Floria were considering running away from their respective families. Why Gunyon's whole existence was devoted to ensuring their bloodline would thrive and continue. Tullian had chosen to become the Ernest's black sheep to escape from such a destiny. Our relationship wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were too many silences, too many secrets between us. I waited for him to open up and tell me, but he never did. Breaking up with him was painful, but it was the right thing to do. We both needed space to grow, and we did. Do you think Lith has opened up to Camilla? Quilla asked. No. Floria shook her head. How can you be so sure? Because I asked him. After all the things Mom told us about them, I hoped that Lith had finally found someone capable of cracking his shell, or at least someone he is able to show his weaknesses to. I can only pray that Camilla is stronger than I was. Otherwise she's destined to follow the same path as I did. Floria sighed. Let me get this straight. Tullian looked her in the eyes. After scoping out the competition, you went straight to him to see how solid their relationship is. I don't know what you two talked about, but it's pretty clear that Lith must have shared something with you that he didn't with Camilla. So now you're waiting for them to break up to catch him on the rebound and make him open up when he's at his weakest. Your plan is vicious, cruel, and cunning. Mom will be proud of you. Agreed. Gunny nodded, making Floria facepalm. I simply meant that, even though Lith has changed for the better during the past 4 years, it's still not enough. At least for me. Without trust and friendship, love is too fragile a feeling to last. The more you love someone, the more painful it is when you realize they have always kept you at the fringes of their heart. She thought. After several dances, the king had the musicians stop. Everyone on the first floor came down to the ballroom, leaving a circular space around the royals. My dear subjects, I'm glad to see that even the most reclusive among us have accepted my invitation and took part in the gala. I hope you've been enjoying the evening. Lith didn't miss how the king had looked directly at the undead during the first part of his speech. Tonight, we haven't assembled only to enjoy each other's company, but also to honor and pay our respects to those who have loyally served the kingdom, even at great personal cost. Lady Journey Ernest, step forward. Journey did as instructed, kneeling in front of the royals with her head down. House Ernest has always been one of the pillars of our kingdom, but your meritorious acts as a royal constable have exceeded what any of your forefathers have ever done. For that, you are promoted to the rank of Archon. The crowd was left astounded. Archons were the supreme magistrates in charge of supervising the work of royal constables. It was a role usually reserved for members of the royal family because the authority it granted was second only to the crown itself. Stand up, Archon Ernest, and take the insignia of your new role. Journey obeyed. Her face was a mask of joy and respect. Yet Lith could see she wasn't happy. Being an Archon meant more work, more danger, more enemies. I was expecting to be promoted to head constable, not this. Journey thought. There must be internal strife within the royal family, and the king needs someone he can trust. Great Mage Verhen, step forward. Backslash, the king said as soon as Journey left the center stage. Backslash, House Verhen is young, and you are its very foundation. For freeing the kingdom of the eternal threat of the Black Star, for protecting the city of Other, and for your contributions in vanquishing the monster outbreaks, I bestow upon you the title of Spellbreaker. Backslash, you are hereby recognized as one of the kingdom's most trusted elite in dealing with rogue mages, and as such your help will be required in times of need. The title grants you the title of Baron and the annuities it deserves, even though it comes with no fief. Backslash, money for my research and no new responsibilities. Lith inwardly sighed in relief. After what had just happened to Journey, he was afraid that his reward was going to be bittersweet too. After the gala, Camilla exchanged communication runes with Quilla and Freya. They were truly sorry for what had happened with Calion and were willing to make it up to her. They seemed to be sincere, but even if they are not, they are still part of Lady Ernest's family and most importantly a part of Lith's life. He's very fond of them, so they deserve a chance. Besides, it would be nice to hear something about their days at the academy. Lith has never talked about his past except after I explained to him why I'm estranged from my family. I guess he's the kind of man who opens up only if I do it first. Or maybe I should just ask him instead on walking on eggshells. Gods, now that he's a baron, my colleagues will never let me hear the end of it. Camilla thought. Journey and Lith congratulated each other, and so did their respective families. To Camilla, Journey said backslash, be ready to assume your role as field assistant constable. Now that I'm an Archon and Lith is a spellbreaker, I'm sure that your application will coincidentally take priority. Backslash. Her voice oozed sarcasm. Backslash. I hope I don't have to wait 4 more years to see you again. Backslash. Floria said with a sad smile. Backslash. I'm only half responsible for that. You have my contact rune, and I doubt it would be hard for a captain to locate a lieutenant. Backslash. Lith stressed his point by giving her a salute. Backslash. Even if you choose to avoid Spellbreaker smartass here, feel free to visit us anytime. We missed you a lot, and so did the kids. Backslash. Rena hugged Floria, making her feel guilty for her prolonged absence. Backslash. I'll visit you when I get my next leave. Unless it's a sick leave, I should have enough time. Backslash. Backslash. Don't worry, dear. Backslash. Journey chuckled. Backslash. I've asked Lith to become our family healer, and he accepted. The next time you get injured in action, I'll make sure you receive proper care. Chapter 531. Lith resumed his duty as a ranger, and since he had used most of his free days preparing for the gala and recovering from the clash with Teska, his schedule was very busy. Chinyu, Freya, and Quilla would have to wait for their turn before he could help them. Weeks passed, and soon the entirety of the north was covered in snow. Most of the time he was called to quell the riots caused by the lack of food in poor neighborhoods, or to discipline merchants who ignored the tiered food prices imposed by the crown thanks to the support of local mercenary guilds. The insides of Solus's tower had been completely redecorated with the coat of arms Lith had chosen for his household. It depicted a black and red dragon coiled around a tower. A magic staff and a sword were crossed below the tower. Now it was embroidered on every carpet, curtain, and tapestry in every room. Backslash. You really have great taste in coat of arms. Backslash. Solus was proud of her complete form standing proud in the middle. Backslash. Why the dragon? Is it because of what Floria said? Backslash. She asked, feigning simple curiosity. Backslash. No. It's because dragons are symbols of power while demons are a symbol of misfortune. I already have the reputation of being bad luck. There's no reason to give more fuel to those rumors. Can you please remove some of the banners? I find them tacky. Backslash. Backslash. How can you say that? I even mimicked the positioning they have inside House Erna's, and you've always said their house is classy. Backslash. Solus was outraged at being called tacky. Backslash. It's classy because with so much space and high-end furniture you can ignore those tacky coats of arms. Maybe it's because you are a shorty that you don't realize that the tower feels cramped with so much crap. Backslash. He chuckled. Ever since he had seen her light body after they merged for the second time, Solus had become sensitive about height issues. It had gotten even worse after Lith had grown so tall. Backslash. I'm not short, you insensitive jerk. I'm petite. There's a big difference. Backslash. Litha's army amulet interrupted their quarrel. Backslash. Ranger Verhen. What's your status? Camilla's voice was worried. I'm still a bachelor, but who knows what the future holds. I meant your position. There is a huge snowstorm approaching the spot of your last report. Don't worry. I've created an underground cave as shelter. He said as Solus warped them from Lucia back to the north and modified the appearance of the tower entrance to resemble an actual cave. Lith gave Solus thumbs up for her excellent work and activated the hologram function. How are you? Do you have enough food? The storm may last a few days. Camilla was relieved that the cave was deep enough she couldn't even hear the wind. I have plenty of food. Anything else? Yes. As soon as the snowstorm ends, you're expected in Jambel. They have a problem with a dungeon. A dungeon? This time of the year? Lith didn't bother to hide his disbelief. Unlike in Earth's video games, dungeons didn't magically appear out of nowhere. Monsters were chaotic and bloodthirsty creatures, unwilling to cooperate even with members of their own tribe, let alone with other species. Sometimes, however, a monster with great power and intellect was born. That kind of creature was capable of enslaving all the other tribes in the surroundings and create an underground fortress thanks to earth magic. Such places were called dungeons or labyrinths, and they were chock full of monsters and traps. Any sane person would stay far away from them and call the army the moment people started to disappear. Yes and yes. It's odd because there has been no sign of monster activity for months there, yet the town has been already attacked twice during the last week by a group composed of different creatures. How did they survive the encounter? Winter is a great shield. Deep snow slowed their movements, and the strong, chilly winds sapped their strength. Monsters don't wear warm clothes, so whenever they attempted to climb Jambel's high walls, the guards only needed to throw buckets of water on them to kill or incapacitate them. The problem is that the second group was stronger and better equipped, otherwise they wouldn't have called for our help. The people of Jambel are proud of their strength. Is that a polite way of saying that they're a bunch of pricks who despise outsiders? Lith asked. According to army regulations, my answer is no. Camilla said while nodding. Great. I can't wait to experience the local hospitality. Lith smiled while banging the back of his head against the wall. He was tired of being treated like crap just because his skin wasn't pale white or his hair being black. Your next report is due tomorrow morning. Over and out. His handler closed the communication too hastily, making Lith inwardly gripe in advance. What did I do wrong this time? He waited a few minutes before calling her with his civilian amulet. Their daily routine involved at least 2 calls a day, one during breakfast, while they were both off duty, and one at the end of her shift. Only one way to find out. Solus sighed. Hi, Cammy. Are you excited about tomorrow? It's your first day as field assistant. After all, Lith opted for a soft approach. No flattery nor small talk, asking her about something she cared to show her that it mattered to him too. You remembered. Yes, I'm very nervous, but also very happy. It's a dream come true. Her frown turned upside down, bestowing upon Lith one of her warm smiles he loved so much. Sadly, it didn't last long. But let's talk about that later. Why didn't you tell me that Quilla had a huge crush on you back at the academy? She pouted with her arms and legs crossed. That day she was wearing a black pencil skirt, so that pose exposed and emphasized her slender legs. Unfortunately, Lith didn't have the opportunity to enjoy the scenery. Why would I tell you something like that? It was just puppy love from a small girl. It was as irrelevant back then as it is now. Lith pinched his nose in frustration. First, because I'm your girlfriend, and I would like to know when I meet one of your exes to avoid embarrassing situations. Second, it's not irrelevant at all since she's one of your best friends. After exchanging their communication runes, Quilla and Camilla spoke often. They could both use a good friend. Also, Camilla wanted to learn about Litha's past while Quilla was curious about life in the north and wanted to make sure Lith was all right. Journey's birthday had been their first meeting since he had joined the army. Quilla missed him dearly. The issue had come to light while talking about their respective past relationships. It had made Camilla fear she had overshared with Quilla, embarrassing her in their previous conversations. She's not an ex. Quilla has never been anything more than a friend, period. Do you want to know about my days with Freya and Uriel too while we are at it? His retort sounded too much like Do you feel also threatened by men? To Camilla's ears, but she didn't budge and rose to the occasion. Chapter 532. Actually, yes. I would love to. If these things are so irrelevant, why are you so secretive about them? We've been together for quite some time now. You can't keep me out of your life like that. Lith recognized this moment and hated it with all of his heart. It was the moment when things in a relationship went from simple fun to serious. Back on Earth, it was his cue to dump or wait to get dumped. Lith called it the nagging point and it put him at a crossroad. He could turtle up, making their relationship turn sour, or open up with the risk that one question would lead to another until Camilla asked about something he couldn't share. Lith knew that she cared, and she was trying to make things between them work, yet he was scared of the consequences the nagging point could have. He would have found it easier to fight and kill several abominations rather than facing that choice. Until this point, their busy schedule and being apart for extended periods of time had made Camilla be patient, avoiding sensitive issues. For a moment, Camilla's image was replaced by Floria's. She had asked him to open up too, until she had given up. Back then he had been happy about it, mistaking it for acceptance. Now he knew better. Can this please wait for my return? There are things I'm not comfortable talking about from a distance. It's fine if you don't feel ready to share your past. I just want you to be honest with me. Camilla's voice lost its edge, turning sweet again. We'll talk once I'm back. I promise. The following day, Lith had Solus warp as near as possible to Jambel, reaching it a few minutes after sunrise. Jambel was a medium-sized fortress city, entirely built of stone. It was too far from the commercial routes to depend on merchants, so it was designed to be self-sufficient all year round. The city was built near two big lakes, which provided fish and fresh water, while cultivated fields surrounded the city walls until the woods began. They were the main source for game and wood, so the inhabitants of Jambel treated it with great respect. They planted 2 trees for each one they cut down and used turnover to give them time to grow. Unlike Makosh, there were no slums. Even the poorest houses were solid. The only wood buildings were tool sheds. Jambel's walls were 5 meters, 16, high and wide enough that 2 armed people could easily walk side by side. They were made of gray stone and smooth so that during the day they would partially reflect the sunlight and blind the aggressors. Lith landed a few hundred meters from the city gates, so as to not scare the guards. He was very surprised when he reached the gates without anyone ordering him to halt or identify himself. Even more when the city lord came out to greet him while the soldiers stood at attention. Ranger Verhen, thanks for coming so quickly. We were starting to fear that we would have to face the 3rd wave of monsters alone. Baron Arrows Wylan was a man in his late 30s, about 1.78 meters, 5'10" tall. He had red hair and a finely trimmed beard, with blue eyes as clear as the twin lakes in front of the city. He was wearing a light armor that emphasized his lean but muscular build. Even the city guards had clean and proper uniforms. Each one of them was physically fit and their equipment well cared for. The Baron looked more like a soldier than a noble, just like his men seemed to be veterans. A 3rd wave? What makes you think they will be back? Lith shook the Baron's hand. His grip was vigorous but friendly. The noble wasn't trying to test Lith. After the 2nd one, I sent some scouts to follow the survivors back to the dungeon. There's a lot of them, and they're damn hungry. When they noticed their companions coming back empty-handed, they killed and cooked them on the spot. That's one heck of a hunger. Lith was more surprised at the scouts' willingness to risk their neck. So far, every city he had been to was full of people who just whined and waited for his intervention. My point exactly. Wylan nodded while offering Lith a mount. There was 1 horse for each soldier. No stagecoach waited for the city lord. Thankfully, Lith had learned how to ride during the boot camp. Monsters cannot fish, and most animals ran away when the creatures first appeared. We are the only thing they can feed upon for miles. With so little practice, he was a lousy rider. But between his physique and the well-trained horse, he had no problem reaching the Baron's mansion. It was a two-story manor, something Lith would have expected from a merchant, not a city lord. Each floor was barely as big as the Urna's ballroom. Only brickwork and a small garden separated the mansion from the surrounding houses, and there was none more luxurious. Only a fool would waste money to build himself a castle if the whole city around him easily burns. Baron Wylan answered Lith's silent question. I prefer spending the gold from the taxes to make the whole of Jambel safe. People with a roof over their head and an honest day job don't turn to crime. Besides, my missus and I don't need much. Hungry, yes. Can I be completely honest with you? Lith walked through the front door while a butler welcomed them home. The hallway was about 20 square meters, 215 square feet, with walls and floor covered by white painted wood. There was a cabinet for the clothes and a small fireplace above which was a series of hangers to dry coats drenched by snow. A soft carpet led to the other rooms, covering most of the floor and keeping the house warm. Absolutely. You're about to risk your life for my people and my city is under siege. I'd much prefer for us to drop the formalities rather than waste our time with pretty words. The butler took the Baron's mantle while the noble sat on one of the chairs near the door to take off his dirty boots and replace them with clean ones. Lith shape-shifted his clothes to show the man he didn't need his help, making him flinch in surprise. The furniture in every room was made of high-quality materials, but its design wasn't ostentatious. This isn't the kind of hospitality I was expecting. I heard things about Jambel. Unpleasant things. Lith took a mental note of everything. The Baron's house wasn't great, but it definitely was a home. It was warm and cozy. Each one of its rooms was lived in, not just designed for impressing guests. It was like he wanted his own house to be. They are all true. The Baron said with a smug grin. We have little patience for outsiders who come into our homes and expect to be served like lords. We bow to no one just because of their wealth, status, or rank. So, rest assured, here you have only friends. Chapter 5:33. Meaning? Lith was starting to understand the Baron's way of life. You're my equal, but not because you too are a Baron, but because you earned your title. I've heard a lot about you, and so have my people. You slew a wyvern as a boy and a dragon as a man. We respect strength here. It was just a man in dragon form. Lith pointed out. Strong and humble. Tell me, lad, when do you plan to start your hunt? When you point me the way. Lith shrugged. See, that's what I'm talking about. Come, there's a lot to eat, and even more to discuss before you leave. Failure's not an option. Lith followed the Baron to the dining hall, where the Baroness and their children were having breakfast. The lady stood up to give their guest a proper greeting, quickly followed by her children. Baron Verhan, this is my wife, Mirias, and my children, Kotu and Iriel. The Baroness was a woman in her mid-30s, with blonde hair and green eyes. She was a good head shorter than her husband, and Lith would have considered her pretty, if not for the milky white skin typical of the North, that gave her a sickly look in his eyes. The siblings had to be twins, both with the red hair of their father and the green eyes of their mother. They too were so pale that Lith's healer instinct brought him seconds away from casting a diagnostic spell on the whole family. He gave them a bow, before sitting at their table, next to Baron Wylan. Only then did Lith notice that the table was actually an enchanted item. While the maids served them fresh white bread and porridge, a holographic map of the area appeared in midair. Lady Wylan's eyes narrowed in annoyance for a split second, but she said nothing. The dungeon is here. The Baron pointed at the base of a small mountain range a few dozen kilometers from Jambel with his fork, making the hologram zoom in. My scouts spotted 3 entrances before the monsters discovered them and attempted to have them for dessert. Here, and here. Wylan drew 3 circles with his knife, and the hologram opened as many small holes in the ground. There could be more. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if after finding my men lurking around, they put out some guards. If you need a distraction, my soldiers can accompany you and draw the attention of the monsters until you get inside. No need. Lith replied after gulping down some porridge. Both it and the bread could have used a pinch more of salt for his tastes. I prefer working alone. What I'm more interested in is what kind of creatures attacked the city and a rough estimate of their numbers, if you have one. I'm sure that when I tell them, my men will buy you all the beer you can drink. They hate dying. The Baron laughed heartily. Dear, put down your cutlery when you speak. You're spilling food everywhere. The Baroness' tone was warm and her smile gentle, yet her eyes were icicles. Iriel too glared at her father, until she noticed Lith watching them. She lowered her gaze and blushed violently, giving her face some color as Lithas lost his own. Oh fuck. Another please be my ticket out of nowhere girl. I need to get out of here. He thought. I'm sorry, dear, but I'm sure our guest doesn't mind. Wylan was an ex-soldier who had risen in the army ranks until he had exchanged his merits for a noble title. Even years after he had retired, he was still used to eating and speaking as fast as he could. Well, maybe some of us do. The lady's silvery voice struck like a fist, making the Lord regain his manners and put the silverware down. The first wave was comprised mostly of small fry. 40 goblins, 32 ogres, and a dozen empowered orcs. I suspect the ruler of the dungeon might be a powerful shaman. Lith nodded him to continue. The second wave was way worse. 50 ogres, 23 empowered orcs, and a few trolls. As for their numbers, I have no clue. The fact they have dispatched almost 100 of them each time makes me think we are talking about at least 1,000 creatures. Are you really sure you want to go in there alone? Positive. Lith replied. Numbers mean nothing in enclosed spaces, and I can wipe out any number of non-magical creatures on my own. I can always fly or warp away if necessary. Can you really use dimensional magic? Iriel's eyes shone like emeralds, making Lith bite his tongue. That's the reason I arrived so fast. Since the horse had already bolted, instead of shutting the barn's door, Lith decided to follow suit. Thanks for the meal and the information. Your men's bravery has saved me a lot of time. I'll take care of the dungeon immediately. Wait. There's one more thing you should know before you go. One of my scouts says he saw a Baylor flying around the mountain. A Baylor. At those words, Lith flinched in disbelief. Such creatures were considered the nobles among the monsters. One of the few fallen races to have retained part of their ancient wisdom and power. I'm sorry, Baron, but if that was true, Jambel should have already fallen. A 1,000-strong army of monsters with a Baylor at its head could easily conquer this city. Also, didn't you say you suspected an orc shaman to be their leader? I agree it's odd, but only one of the scouts saw it. Maybe he's wrong, or maybe the attack on Jambel is just a diversion. The Baron nodded. I suspect an orc shaman because there is no other explanation to empowered orcs, and because they would never submit to an evil eye. Baylors and orcs are sworn enemies. They would never cooperate. The truth was that with their demonic appearance, Baylors resembled the fabled creatures that, according to orcs' lore, had caused the fall of their race. Baylors had no grudge against the orcs that they didn't share with the whole of Mogar. Do you have any idea how so many creatures managed to spawn so close to your city without anyone noticing? Lith could already smell a lot of troubles. In his experience, the more things didn't add up, the bigger the underlying mess was. A mess he would have to survive first and clean later. None. It's indeed a mystery. The Baron sighed, well aware of how silly his words sounded. Before leaving, Lith used the holographic table to carefully study the region and plan his next moves. I'm afraid this will not be a simple cleanup. An orc shaman can cripple our strength, and a baler might even be my equal. Lith regretted not understanding Orcish language. Otherwise, he could have learned many things from the shaman. Back in Other, Journey had given him plenty of tips on how to loosen the tongue of a captured enemy, both literally and metaphorically. Do you think an abomination is behind the dungeon? Solus was triggered at the thought of experiencing the event of Makosh again. No, unless it's the dungeon master. He replied, the anomaly here is the creature's behavior, not their abilities. Only time will tell us how deep the rabbit hole goes. Chapter 534. Lith left before the Wyland family was done with their breakfast, leaving Iriel no time for small talk. He took off, taking the quickest route to the Broken Spine, the discontinuous mountain range where the dungeon was located. Lith flew at an optimal altitude, which allowed him to safely scout the area around him with life vision and identify underground monsters' nests. He had to make sure the creatures weren't preparing a big attack, otherwise he might have been forced to retreat during the raid to protect the city. For a ranger, the number of slain creatures was but a secondary achievement. The real source of merits was the survival rate of those they are tasked to protect. Monsters needed only days to become fully grown, while a single artisan needed decades to be trained. Another good thing about Camilla is that ever since we got together, you've stopped pushing me toward every girl we meet. Lith inwardly grinned. Well, that doesn't mean I don't feel bad for Iriel. For once you could help someone without getting laid as your hidden agenda. Solus rebukes. Yeah, right. Going from Princess of Nowhere to a big city would be a death sentence to her unless someone takes care of her. I can already picture how any sane woman would react if I brought home an 18-year-old girl. Solus couldn't retort anymore. Even if Solus could read Lith's thoughts, in Camilla's shoes she would still kick his ass. The area was clear of any life form, monster or otherwise. Like the Baron had reported to Lith, animals and magical beasts had left the area. Those who had failed to notice their presence because of hibernation were all dead. Once Lith reached the Broken Spine, he didn't head directly towards the known entrances, but scouted the area to determine how smart and powerful his opponents were. I don't like this, Solus thought. My mana sense detects a series of powerful arrays both above and below the ground. Not only have I never seen most of them, but they also form an elaborate framework. Monsters aren't supposed to be able to craft something so complicated, let alone in such a limited time frame. Lith nodded as he read the floating runes, trying to make a sense out of them. After moving all the Warden books in their possession inside Soluspedia, they were able to identify at least the function of the unknown arrays. Their design is very old. Lith pondered. None of them are designed to be offensive or defensive. I can see cloaking, containment, and even amplifying arrays. The kind which are used for a secret lab, not a fortress. I can't short-circuit them and get rid of the monsters in one fell swoop. They are all the permanent kind. To do that, I'd need to tamper with the mana crystals fueling them, but they are likely to be scattered all over the Broken Spine. Judging by the size of these arrays, the dungeon extends throughout the whole area. I don't think that even a baler could perform such monumental work. Do you want to call for backup? Solus asked. And lose my loot? Lith sneered. If this really is the secret lab of an ancient mage, finders keepers. At least as long as I'm the only one who knows it. Thanks to his exploration, he found several entry points to the dungeon, most of which were unguarded. Lith noticed that while the edges of the caves were rough, and so was the surface of the corridors leading inside, the tunnels were smooth and flawless. To dig through so many meters of rock with their bare hands must have taken them months. Solus was horrified noticing the claw marks and bloodstains along the exits. The most likely hypothesis is that they must have been imprisoned here for a long time, and they only recently managed to escape. Then why are they still holed up in here? Lith thought. More importantly, what the heck did they eat until they escaped? Both an orc shaman and a baler could easily dig their way out. Why did neither of them take care of the exits? There were far more questions than answers, but Lith's loot sense was tingling. An orc shaman meant another huge mana crystal, while a baler refusing to leave could only mean that the creature was after something precious. Balers were smart enough to collect magical items to compensate for their innate shortcomings, but like all monsters, they had no dimensional items. They couldn't easily transport something fragile or huge, whereas Lith had no such problem. Lith kept his greed in check as Solus's words about the abominations echoed in his head. He found a guarded entrance and unleashed a pack of undead wolves on the unfortunate goblins on duty. They screamed and died like common goblins, without showing any sign of mutation or special abilities. Lith remained hidden in the shadows as his minions feasted on the corpses. If those goblins are like the wargs, the abomination inside of them should react to their deaths and call for reinforcements. Lith thought, but even after several minutes, no one appeared. During that time, he studied the goblins' clothes and equipment. They were well dressed, wearing cotton shirts, leather pants, and shoes. The most intriguing thing was the coat of arms on their clothes, representing a black tower set ablaze with a golden crown on top of it. Even their weapons, lances, and bucklers were made of good quality metal. Their master had even had them customized to a goblin's proportions. Once Lith was certain that no enemy was coming his way, he sent the undead pack inside as a diversion while he entered from one of the unguarded entrances. The corridor went deep underground, leading to what was definitely not a dungeon, but rather a home. Monsters had no use for doors, magical lights, or tags to identify each room. There were even signs at every crossroad, pointing toward different zones. If only I could read this gibberish. Lith inwardly griped after following one of them at random and finding the biggest glass workshop he had ever seen. There were vials, beakers, and many components for alchemical apparatus of every shape and size. His anger faded after noticing they were all of the highest grade and storing some of them inside his pocket dimension. Suddenly, the link between Lith and his minions disappeared. What worried him was that they didn't die fighting. Someone had slaughtered them all in just a couple of seconds. Undead are hard to kill and monsters are dumb. Could they have been so unlucky to meet the shaman? If so, he could have drained the darkness element from them for an easy kill. The explanation worked, yet it wasn't enough to put Lith's paranoia at ease. He moved toward the direction from which he had last sensed the undead wolves, checking every door on his way. Unluckily, most of them were locked, and even more unluckily, not by a simple lock. Lith had no time to crack them open one by one, not with so many enemies roaming around, nor with life vision telling him that there was nothing inside that had a strong magical aura. Chapter 5:35. Whoever had built the lab wasn't one for furnishing it. Every corridor was identical on every floor. The ground and the walls were constructed with a honey-hued mix of stone and soil, while the importance of every door could be determined by their silver-wood ratio. Silver was the best mana conductor, making it possible to store and amplify all the spells it was enchanted with. The corridors were wide, but offered no cover to move stealthily. Lith had to rely on life vision to spot his enemies from around the corners and kill them quickly after conjuring a silent zone. All of them wore fine clothes with a faint magical aura, yet it wasn't enough to explain how they could be so spotless and in mint condition after being allegedly worn by prisoners for years. Around the next corner, there is a group of 4 orcs coming from the direction your wolves died. Solus warned Lith. One of them has a bright green mana core and a powerful life force. He must be the shaman. What about the crystal? Lith's life vision confirmed Solus's reading, but at the same time, it made him worry. There was no trace of the mana crystal, and the shaman appeared to have an incredibly strong mana and life flow for his green core. I can't see it either. He has no magical equipment. Solus couldn't explain how such a small group of orcs could have killed a whole pack of undead so fast. Lith charged forward with the gatekeeper bastard's sword in his hand, using gravity magic to run on the ceiling rather than the ground. Orcs were humanoid creatures, with an average height of 1.8 meters, 5'11". They were gifted from birth with a physique similar to that of an awakened. They were stronger, faster, and sturdier than humans. Their bodies were naturally resistant to most elements, and they would rarely get sick. It was uncommon for an orc to display a talent for magic, but when it happened, the creature would always be born awakened. They were all bald, with skin as brown as tree bark and almost as hard. Orcs also had enhanced senses that made it difficult to take them by surprise, and were able to display short bursts of fire or air fusion, but not both at once. The creatures paid no attention to the noise of Lith's approach until it was too late. A hush zone prevented them from calling for help, and the attack came from above while they were still searching for the source of the footsteps. The echo of the corridors confused their enhanced hearing, making them look left and right. Thanks to water fusion, Litha's arm was able to move like it had no bones. The gatekeeper avoided the orcs' thick arms that were guarding their vitals and killed 3 of them with as many quick thrusts. The fuck? Lith thought as the alleged shaman deflected the tip of the blade with the back of his hand while taking a few steps back. Litha's surprise turned into amazement when he noticed that the orc didn't look like an orc at all. It had shoulder-length snow-white hair, a lean but muscular physique like that of a professional athlete, and long pointy ears. There was no trace of the orc's characteristic bloodlust in the delicate, almost feminine, features of his face. Thanks to his brown skin, it would have been easy for him to go unnoticed in the woods, but inside the stone corridor, he stood out like a sore thumb. Why does this guy look like an elf? Lith suddenly remembered how, according to the lore, orcs were a fallen race descending from the elves. Beats me, but his life force is definitely that of an orc. Solus pointed out, do elves really exist? Are they all so hot? Their enemy was indeed good-looking, but Lith had other things to worry about. The orc was infused with all the elements and had conjured a sword made of ice from the humidity in the air. Both things were supposed to be impossible for members of a fallen race. It was you who sent those undead. Your corpse will make a fine dish. I'm tired of eating goblins. A cruel hunger deformed the orc's face at the idea of tasting human flesh again after so much time. Suddenly Solus didn't find him hot anymore. You can speak. Lith replied enthusiastically as he unleashed a plague arrow with each thrust of his sword. The orc nimbly deflected the blade, but the spells messed up his amateurish footwork by forcing him to dodge while he parried. Their physical abilities were similar, but the orc had no training in any kind of martial arts and was relying on his natural talents. The first thrust of the gatekeeper cracked the ice blade. The second and third injured the orc's legs. Lith could have killed him easily, but dead men told no tales. To make matters worse for the orc, he was not used to the abilities of his ancestral form. He tried multiple times to conjure a spell just for Lith to tamper with it and make it blow up in the orc's face. Soon the stone sword broke into pieces and the orc's body was bleeding from many deep cuts. Lith struck his enemy with a fist containing a healing spell that mended all of the orc's wounds, sapping a great deal of his remaining stamina. His knees buckled and Lith grabbed him by the throat, lifting the orc up as if he was just a stuffed animal. Tell me who you are, what is happening here, and how you killed my minions so fast. Lith used invigoration to find the nerve bundles Journey had taught him about and pressed them with his free hand, causing the orc to writhe in agony. I won't tell you anything. The monster managed to smile in defiance. It's much better if I show you. The creature used a breathing technique that closely resembled invigoration, but instead of absorbing the surrounding world energy, it was accumulated on the orc's right hand. You can cast Tier 4 spells without consuming your mana? Not bad. Hannibal Lectulus. Lith reacted before the spell was fully formed by clenching his hand around the orc's and crushing it along with the suicidal attack. The orc screamed in pain for the first time as his hand imploded under Litha's grip and exploded due to his own spell gone wild. Interesting. Such a breathing technique is as powerful as it is flawed. It saves the user the strain of handling the mana, so they can cast even spells above their level. Yet because such spells are only made of world energy, they can still hurt their caster. Lith thought, why does he not fear death? Solus pondered. Even now, he is still smiling. Lith had to squeeze the orc's throat to stop him from making a second attempt. Lith crushed the creature's remaining limbs and knocked him unconscious before dropping him onto the ground. Well, if he doesn't talk, let's see what I can find out on my own. Scanner and invigoration revealed that there was something odd with the reverted orc. His life force was unnatural, squeezed in its actual form by a second life force wrapping the orcs like a shroud. Chapter 536. Undead Life Force. Solus was flabbergasted. Could he have evolved after absorbing the darkness magic animating your wolves? Lith had no explanation for the phenomenon, yet he noticed that the orc's clothes were too big for him. They were sized for a regular orc, which meant that either his transformation really had just happened or the creature didn't care about having them fixed. After a throughout body scan of the fainted elf orc, Lith and Solus had no idea what events could be unfolding in the underground lab. The creature's anatomy was almost identical to its corrupted counterpart. The only anomalies were the slightly different shape of his organs and his mana core resonating with the world energy, making him recover his mana faster than a human would. After waking the orc up, Lith discovered that all the means of interrogation at his disposal were useless. The creature would cut off his pain receptors at the first opportunity he got, and even if Lith could easily undo it, the orc proved to be resistant to pain beyond reason. Since more monsters were approaching, Lith killed to orc while he still had some time left before being discovered. Just as he expected, death reverted the monster to his original form. Life vision revealed the undead life force leaving the body, but unluckily, it moved as fast as lightning and passed through the ground. Lith had no opportunity to follow it before it disappeared from his sight. It was definitely not from your wolves, Solus pointed out. Otherwise, it would have just faded. Lith nodded and hid around a corner to avoid the next patrol. It was composed of 5 ogres. They were all very tall, above 2 meters, 6'7", with muscular bodies that could have passed for humans if not for their greenish skin, their spiky red hair, and the long, pointy fangs protruding out of their lower lip. Once again, one of them was very different from the others. He had no fangs and his hair seemed to be made of red autumn leaves. There was a calm, solemn light of intelligence reflected in his eyes that deeply contrasted with the brutish appearance of his peers. Is it me, or does this guy resemble the dryads we met years ago? After meeting the wargs, Lith had started to wonder if even plants and magical beasts were part of the fallen races. The reverted ogre's appearance seemed to confirm his suspects. What happened to Kaliel's unit? Said one of the ogres. He stuttered every word with a pained expression, as if using human language poisoned his tongue. There is no sign of struggle. The dryad ogre calmly observed. And none of us would have wasted so much meat. Either Yasmo himself or one of his elite units must have breached the barricade. We need to split into 2 teams. One will bring the corpses to the kitchen and give the alarm while the other will try to slow them down. I'll do the tracking. The ogre started chanting in an unknown language as 2 of his soldiers picked up the bodies and stored them inside huge sacks. A barricade? Then the monsters are infighting, which would explain why they eat their own. How did they survive so long, though? To spawn fast, they need to eat so much that they should have died of starvation long ago. Litha's musing was interrupted the moment the ogre dryad finished his chanting. Based on its length, it had to be a tier 1 spell. Lith cursed when he noticed red marks appearing on the floor, the ceiling, and wherever the bodies of the fallen orcs had touched the walls during the previous fight. Among the red marks, there was a clear series of footprints leading to his position. Ambush. The ogre warned his soldiers a second too late. Ice lances pierced their heads and hearts, killing the regular ogres on the spot. They would have done the same to the ogre dryad, if not for 2 holes opening where the lances were about to hit. Instead of flesh and bones, the creature was made of vines that normally were wrapped together so tightly that they gave it a humanoid appearance. An ogre's body is actually made of fossilized plants. Solus's scientific curiosity was on cloud 9. That's why they are green. I don't really care about that right now. No matter if Litha's attacks were magical or physical in nature, in its vine form the ogre was as able to split at will and dodge every one of them with ease. You don't chant, which means you're an awakened. The creature's voice was filled with surprise and envy. His body split into 5 bundles of vines, 4 of which dug their way into the dead ogre's bodies and reanimated them. Lith could see thanks to life vision that they were no undead. The vines were taking root, turning the corpses into clones of the original. Both their mana cores and life force had an energy signature identical to those of the original body. Lith struck at them with several flaming darts, discovering that the clones were incapable of turning into vines as well. The darts left behind burn marks and produced a pungent smell, yet the fire didn't take. The clones' life force was unchanged, while their bodies shrunk slightly, as if they had been starving for days. I think I know their weak point. Lith's smile disappeared as he heard 5 identical voices chanting as many different spells. He conjured a blizzard, but unfortunately, nor the wind nor the injuries opened by the razor-sharp hail his spell produced could stop the enemy's casting. Vines had no mouths, and even if somehow they experienced pain, it didn't show. A small tornado formed around Lith, blocking his sight and restricting his movements. Wind blades were randomly mixed with the chaotic air currents surrounding him. Black clouds formed on the ceiling with a low rumble announcing a thunderstorm. Lith used life vision to detect the otherwise invisible air blades, and full guard to avoid the other spells incoming from his blind spots. The enemies had a limited choice of attacks, which he exploited to make them predictable. His blizzard was still ongoing, making most fire spells lose their effectiveness, while the whole underground complex was shielded by arrays which made it immune to earth magic. It explained why the creatures had been forced to dig with their hands. Lith stood his ground as long as he could, strengthening his magical storm by the second. He blinked away only when the lightning bolts from above or the darkness spells the enemies threw at him from the sides would force him to walk into the air blades. It was a stupid move to use water magic against me. The ogre roared as it relocated the tornado for the 3rd time. You should have used fire instead. Lith ignored the taunt and focused on defense as he gave his spell one last push. All of the enemy attacks disappeared at once when the extreme cold froze the abundant water inside the vines and turned them into popsicles. What a moron, Lith thought as he crushed the ice sculptures that once were the ogre dryad. I was right about the reverted monsters not knowing anything about their own abilities. Fire is only good against dry wood, whereas wet vegetation would only produce a lot of smoke and hinder the only one who actually needs to breathe. Me. Chapter 5:37. Why was he scared of fire then? Solus asked. Probably because he was a normal ogre until not long ago. All living beings are naturally afraid of fire. He had yet to realize that with no vitals and with light magic at his disposal, fire is a small threat for a water-based creature like he was. Stop wasting time. You strong. Master can use you. Lith turned toward the source of the voice, yet neither life vision nor mana sense showed anything. At least not until a hunched figure literally emerged from the shadows. The creature didn't resemble anything Lith had ever seen before, nor was it listed in any of the bestiaries he possessed. It was a small humanoid, barely 1.3 meters for 3 tall, with pale gray skin and thick grizzled hair. Judging by his appearance and his voice, he seemed to be a male. He had small pointed ears, pitch black eyes, and was wearing a mage's robe. Despite his jagged teeth and the claws at the end of his limbs, it didn't look menacing. The creature's life force was slightly better than the average adult man, while his blood core was almost completely black. Lith didn't underestimate him and silently weaved more spells in case looks were proverbially deceiving. How the heck did he escape our senses? Solus kept an eye on all the remaining shadows of the corridor, in case the creature was just a distraction. Lith had no answer to offer. His senses were all focused on his surroundings, since things were getting weirder by the second. The corpses of the ogres he had just killed turned into smoke and dived into the ground, closely followed by the undead life force, which had restored the dryad ogre's ancient might. Tell me who you are, what is happening here, and what you mean, wasting time. Either the creature really was harmless or wanted to manipulate him. At least he seemed to be willing to communicate. Me rat pack. The creature shrugged. War is happening, but fighters waste time, just like you. None can die. We banished from death thanks to Master's power. Lith stared at Rat Pack, waiting for him to continue his explanation, but the creature just stared back in annoyance. You deaf? Stop wasting time. Soon Kaliel and Drago will be back. With reinforcements. You soldier. Rat Pack pointed his gray finger to Lith's uniform. You act like one and obey. His voice was deep and rough. It was filled with an underserved pride which annoyed Lith almost as the vague answers he had just received. I obey no one. Lith replied while using spirit magic to lift the creature off the ground and slam him against a well-lighted wall. Choking an undead was useless, if not to prove a point. If you want my help, you'd better give me a good reason. Start by making sense. Otherwise, Lith's threat was interrupted by Rat Pack turning into a puff of smoke. It lasted only 1 second, but it was enough to escape from Spirit Magic's grasp and reach the nearest shadow. No you don't. Lith snarled. He extended his arm to direct his tendrils of mana toward their target, who turned once again ethereal the moment Rat Pack touched the edge of the shade. Only Master can harm Rat Pack. Even Yasmo and Danka, even their armies couldn't catch Rat Pack. Obey or die. Lith didn't reply, redirecting the mana from spirit to darkness magic. He had learned a couple of things while fighting Thrud Griffin. It was time to put them to the test. Lith's shadow came to life as 2 blazing yellow eyes appeared on its face. The shadow's extended right arm stretched along the floor until it reached Rat Pack's hiding place. Neither Lith nor Solus liked how his darkness magic-infused shade resembled more his demonic life form rather than his human one. The shadow's hand rummaged for a while before retracting. The elongated arm was coiled around the small undead like a snake. Rat Pack screamed in surprise as soon as he felt something touching him. His master's coward's mantle was supposed to protect him from any harm, yet the ranger had been able to ignore its protection. To make matters worse, Rat Pack could feel his strength getting slowly sapped. Not even undeath could ward off darkness magic. Are you ready to talk? Lith said while pointing the gatekeeper at Rat Pack's throat. The creature's eyes were filled with fear, which made him nod like a parrot having a seizure. Then explain things properly. Lith snorted. Me has many names. Squirm, Plague, Worm. Rat Pack is Master's favorite because he says me very annoying. He is right, damn it. I don't care for your names. Tell me what's happening here. Servants rebelled against Master and took Master prisoner. After that, they fight each other. 2 great leaders emerge. Danka the Orc Shaman and Yasmo the Baler. All servants join one or the other, forming 2 armies. They fight for Rat Pack stopped, not knowing how to explain. For freedom. And also for power. Rat Pack clapped his hands, congratulating to himself for being so precise. Unluckily, Lith didn't share his enthusiasm. What freedom? If your master is already being held prisoner, they can just walk away. What power are you talking about? They can't leave. Rat Pack nervously licked his lips, revealing such a black tongue that it resembled a slimy piece of charcoal. Master made them like him. They have no freedom. As for power, it's the Master's, but they found a way to use it. To make them pretty again. Like Kaliel and Draga. Yes, like them. The creature nodded again like crazy, feeling someone was approaching. What do you want me to do exactly? Lith dilated his nostrils in annoyance. He didn't know whether to find more bothersome Rat Pack's ramblings or the idea of monsters like a Baler regaining their full powers. Follow me to Master. Master explains better. You free him, he stops servants. Hurried footsteps were perfectly audible and quickly approaching, yet the ranger didn't seem to care. Why would I? If your master has already been defeated once by his servants, they can do it again. They have even robbed him of his power. What use do I have for him? Yes, he's weak, but he's still strong. You can't defeat all master's servants alone. Enough talk. We run now. The ogre dryad and the orc elf appeared from a corner, running at full speed, closely followed by several members of their own kin. Lith raised the index and middle fingers of his right hand, unleashing the Tier 4 spell Death Zone. A black cloud comprised of darkness element filled the corridor in front of them the moment the monsters were halfway through. No matter the direction they turned to, all of them died after taking a few steps. What were you saying? Lith's eyes were blazing with blue mana, which deeply contrasted with his shadow's burning yellow eyes. It was still seemingly alive and moving around on its own, even though its main body was standing still. Rat Pack shivered in fear, wondering how powerful humans had become during the decades he and his master had spent in isolation. Backslash, you too strong. Why you struggle earlier if you can just... Backslash. Rat Pack stuttered so much that he preferred to slam his fist onto his palm to stress his point. Chapter 538. Backslash struggle. Backslash, Lith sneered. Backslash, I was saving my strength and making a few experiments. Finding a reverted monster is a rare opportunity. I just wanted to see what they were capable of. Backslash. Lith had learned enough about magic to know that as long as he understood the underlying principles of the so-called backslash, innate abilities backslash, he could find a way to replicate them and add them to his arsenal. Backslash experiments. Backslash, Rat Pack echoed, swallowing a lump of saliva. The word brought to memory countless unpleasant experiences. Backslash, master, and you peas in a pod. Backslash. Backslash, you have yet to answer my final question. Backslash, Lith pushed the gatekeeper's tip against Rat Pack's throat. Backslash, why should I free your master? What use do I have for him? Backslash. Backslash, maybe you can slay all. Backslash, Rat Pack licked his lips again. Backslash, maybe you can break master's device, but can you do both? You slay, but they return. The closer you get to the device, the faster they return. Master can shut down device with one finger. Master is its master. Backslash. Rat Pack made little sense, yet Lith considered he still had a point. If this master had been a quiet presence for so long, there was no reason for him to stir trouble, whereas the same couldn't be said for his rebellious servants. Why should I waste time cracking locks and arrays if he can just pass through them with a flick of their switches? Also, exploring the whole complex would take me months while I have days at best before the army sends reinforcements to backslash help backslash me. Lith couldn't afford the underground lab to be discovered. The kingdom would snatch the good stuff and leave him the crumbs. If this master is willing to compensate me for my troubles, I'll get what I want without wasting my time. Otherwise, I can always kill or imprison him again and test my luck with the doors. First things first, though. Backslash, does this master of yours experiments on abominations too? Is he the master? Backslash, the title was so trite that it was likely that they were two different people, but Lith preferred to be sure who he was about to deal with. Backslash, master experiments on anything. Backslash, Rat Pack sighed, as even more bad memories resurfaced. Being undead didn't mean being spared from pain. Backslash, my coward's cloak, made from abomination skin. Backslash, his words made Lith open his eyes wide in surprise. As far as he knew, abominations had no skin. He touched Rat Pack's clothes, using invigoration to observe its pseudo-core. I got it, but I'll take some notes, just to be safe. Solas's memory was peerless, but she could also access to Lith's like it was a library. A messy and chaotic one, but after so many years, she knew her way. Backslash, no. I mean, does he help abominations? Does he work with them? Backslash, Lith tried to be clearer. Backslash, no. Master helps only himself. Master works only with Rat Pack. Me assistant. Backslash, the creature said with a proud voice. Backslash, then make way. Backslash, Lith nodded. Backslash, be careful. We must move unnoticed. I want to avoid useless fights. Backslash. Rat Pack knew the underground complex like the back of his hand, while Lith could detect enemies from afar with life vision. By putting together their resources, the duo quickly reached the lower levels of the lab. Along the way, Lith asked Rat Pack what the various signs meant to achieve a basic understanding of the ancient language, just in case things with the master went sour and he had to explore on his own. Rat Pack was annoyed by his questions, but he didn't dare to displease Lith. The creature needed the ranger as much as he was afraid of him. Every time they were forced to fight, Lith would go all out, killing whole units of powerful monsters in the blink of an eye. The moment the monsters realized to be under attack, they were already dead. Rat Pack didn't like the human because he reminded him too much of the master. Rat Pack's undead senses could hear Lith's heart beating like they were just taking a stroll. Even though they were surrounded from every side by enemies, there was no sweat on his body nor emotion in his movements. Walking to his side felt exactly like when he accompanied the master before his fall. Rat Pack had the impression of being a mouse riding on the back of a dragon. When they reached the 8 underground floor, the creature signaled Lith to stop. Backslash, we arrived. Trouble is here. Backslash, Rat Pack pointed at the many reinforced doors along the corridors. Each room was bigger than those on the other floors and was enveloped by multiple unique arrays. What is stored in the lower levels? Lith had expected the prison to be on the last floor since the deeper they got, the stronger the magical aura he detected became. Bad stuff. Horrible stuff. Rat Pack shuddered. Master love experiments and hate failures. He always destroy failures, but some he can't get rid of, either because they don't die or because too valuable. Those master stores below, where array keep them in another space ready to collapse. Thanks to all his questions about the road signs they had met along the way, Lith had understood what each floor was for. The ground floor was a storage area for non-magical equipment, the equivalent of a broom closet. The master's living quarters took all the first underground floor, while the servants' quarters were on the second one. Lith was amazed by how someone could be so conceited that he had taken for himself the same space 1,000 minions did. The third and fourth underground floors were the lab, the fifth was the ingredient deposit, the sixth was the treasury, and the seventh was a silver mine. According to Rat Pack, his master had chosen the Broken Spine as his residence because of the rich silver veins he had discovered. It was the only way to satisfy his need for the precious metal without the need for an external supplier. Is it normal for those doors to be opened? Lith pointed at the unlocked door of some cells. He already knew the answer, since the owner of the lab was the kind of guy to keep even the cleaning products deposit tight shut. No. Rat Pack hissed. Danka and Yasmo must have freed them. They desperate to seek help from those who could replace them. Solus, can you see what's inside? Life vision is blurred by all the locks and arrays enveloping the cells. The doors must be made of solid silver, because I've never seen so many spells stuffed inside a single object. Lith would have loved to take a peek at their cores with invigoration, but they were infused with too many deadly spells, and he already had too much to do. Lith had already planned to raid the treasury and the ingredient deposit before calling for backup if things went south. Sorry, but mana sense is useless here. The whole floor is so bright that is like staring into the sun. A whole army of awakened could hide behind a corner, and I wouldn't even notice them. Those doors are just wow. Each one of the doors had a blue mana crystal the size of a fist at its four corners, and a different magic circle formed by small purple mana crystals the size of a nut. Chapter 539. Thanks to life vision, Lith could see that every inch of their surface was covered in mystical runes. Wait a minute. Lith snapped out of his reverie. How did they open those doors? They master assistants, just like Rat Pack. They have codes for all doors. 8th floor is for specimens. If you can open your master's cage. What do you need me for? You really deaf. I need you deal with trouble. Rat Pack whispered while pointing at the next corridor to their right. Lith peeked behind the corner, noticing a Baylor standing guard in front of the most complex door they had met so far. The creature was over 2.5 meters, 8'2", tall, with a humanoid body covered by small blood-colored scales. His head had 3 eyes arranged in a vertical line. A red one was in the middle of his forehead, a black one was right above his nose, and a blue one was between his lower lip and his chin. 3 sets of black curved horns emerged from his head, his cheekbones, and the sides of his chin. His massive upper body was completely exposed and seemed to be comprised solely of bulging muscles. His legs were reverse-jointed like those of a cat, and were covered by a black armor that only left the talons extending out from his toes and heel exposed. 2 flaming red membranous wings were folded around his neck, almost looking like a mantle. That's not trouble. That's a Baylor. Lith cursed at Rat Pack with a whisper. You wrong. He call himself True Bleskamas the Fierce, but Master call him Trouble because he escaped 3 times before Master could find a proper door to contain him. Trouble hate Master's experiments and hate Master even more. Lith ignored Rat Pack's ramblings and prepared a set of spells according to the information he had about Baylors and his full-blown paranoia. Despite their appearance, they were no demons. According to the lore, before their fall they had 6 eyes, 1 for each element and colored accordingly. Their eyes granted them mastery over all the elements. but they were also their weak point. Losing an eye meant losing the corresponding element, and since magic didn't flow through their bodies, they were incapable of mixing together different elements, leaving them stuck with the equivalent of Tier 4 magic. After their fall, Balers could have from 1 to 3 eyes, while the others were allegedly fused within their bodies by the failed attempt to evolve and force the mana to flow freely. Any advice? Lith had never faced one, but could see via life vision that the creature's vitality was on par with Scarlet the Scorpicore. Luckily, its mana flow was way worse than the Lord of the Forests. If he wasn't stand in front of that fucking door, maybe. Lith was flabbergasted by Solus's swearing. I'm almost blind, so take my words with a grain of salt. The Baler seems to have 4 mana cores. A bright cyan one in its usual place, right below his solar plexus, and 3 green ones inside his eyes. Got it. The good news is that he can't use light magic, so if I manage to destroy 1 or more of his eyes, he can't regenerate them. Lith was done with his preparations. He was about to step in the corridor when he felt Rat Pack tugging at his leg. Master told me that Trouble has weakness, that even Rat Pack can face him if I wear magical protections. Master gave it to Rat Pack give it to you, The small creature took out a bundle of shackles linked to several envelopes from his pocket, which was actually a pocket dimension. It made little sense to Lith, more so since according to life vision, they were not enchanted. What's this supposed to be? He asked. Isn't it obvious? It's a chainmail. Rat Pack puffed out his chest with pride while Lith opened one of the envelopes. If you're reading this, you're not the moron I always thought you were. Happy Death Day, Zulgrish, Lith had no time to waste explaining to the moron what a pun was, so he returned the gift and launched himself against Trouble while infused with all the elements. The Baler gave no sign of being surprised by the sudden attack. Trubleskama's middle eye ignited with mana, and what looked like a 2-handed scimitar made of black smoke appeared in his right hand. Much to Lith's surprise, the gatekeeper clashed against the black smoke, and the sudden impact threw him off balance, allowing the Baler to send him flying away with but a flick of his wrist. How is that possible? Darkness magic is supposed to be ethereal. I was expecting him to attempt to trade blows. What the heck? Only then did Lith notice that the blue eye was lit too, meaning the sword was composed of black ice. Seems that Balers can mix elements after all. Lith inwardly cursed at the army bestiary's author as the red eye too was set ablaze with mana, generating a pillar of cyan flames that filled the whole corridor, leaving Lith no way out. Lith encased himself inside a massive ice coffin to protect himself and seal the corridor. His own spells couldn't harm him exactly how the Baler's flames had no effect on their caster after rebounding on the enemy barrier. Soon the fire consumed all the air in the corridor, forcing the spell to disappear, the red eye to close, and the Baler to fall to his knees gasping for oxygen. The creature's black eye lit up again, unleashing a pillar of darkness so powerful that the arrays protecting the lab became visible to the naked eye as they prevented the Baler's spell from turning the walls into debris. Their positions were now reversed. Lith was stuck inside the ice, just like the Baler was trapped in the small corridor a second ago. To not lose his life, Lith was forced to lose his advantage and shatter the ice to blink to safety. Fresh air filled both the corridor and the Baler's lungs as he unfolded his wings to chase his opponent. Trubleskama's flew in a spiral pattern to prevent Lith from predicting his trajectory and using dimensional magic to stab him in the back. Contrary to his expectations, no attack came until he reached the T-junction where the 2 corridors met. Only then did he realize he had fallen into a trap. Lith knew that his enemy's physical prowess was way above his own. He had considered using spell-sealing arrays, but they would cripple the only edge he had. Arrays worked both ways, affecting their caster along with their target. Hence, he had decided to stay at a safe distance and play it smart. 2 death zones were waiting for Trubleskamas, one at each side of the junction. The darkness spells resembled 2 small thunderclouds, which completely engulfed the corridors as they converged on the Baler. Trubleskamas exploded in a wild laughter and opened his middle eye again. A second pillar of darkness clashed with Lith's death zone with such violence that the entire corridor trembled and all of the arrays protecting the cells became visible. Lith was amazed by how a simple cyan core could emit such power without a moment's notice. His surprise only increased when, even as it was powered by his blue core and boosted by a continuous flow of mana, Death Zone was overpowered by the black pillar. Chapter 540. The sudden turn of events would have reversed the trap, turning Lith into the prey if he hadn't positioned himself in front of another junction, just to be safe. The moment he understood he was on the losing side of the battle, Lith gave his Death Zone one last push and rolled around a corner to safety. What the heck? They were both Tier 4 spells, but I'm the one with a blue core. How could I possibly lose the confrontation? Lith's question was rhetorical, since the bestiary provided no answers to that impossible situation. Yet Solus knew better. His cyan core is indeed weaker. The problem lies in the support the green core inside his eyes provide. If a green core could do that much, together we would be invincible. Lith griped. Let me finish, dummy. Unlike a normal mana core, the ones in his eyes are able to draw the world energy and use it to empower his pillar like spells to no end. It wasn't a blue core versus a cyan plus a green one. It was you versus Mogre. Let me get this straight. Thanks to his eyes, a Baylor can basically use invigoration non-stop, even while attacking. Things were starting to make sense, and thanks to that, Lith could adapt his strategy. Yes and no. Like invigoration, the eye provides a constant flow of world energy and also puts stress on the user. After using a pillar, the creature closes the corresponding eye. Unlike your breathing technique, it didn't heal him nor replenish his mana. Even a half-blind Solus was worth several Baylor's eyes in boosting Lith's understanding and battle prowess. Lith blinked away the moment life vision showed him True Bleskama's was around the corner. The Baylor blocked the corridor with his massive body as his blue eye emitted a pillar which turned air into rock-solid ice at its passage. The attack had a double purpose. If Lith was still there, he would have been frozen solid into an easy prey. If he had warped away as True Bleskama's expected, by sealing the corridor, the Baylor was forcing the Ranger into a head-on fight that he couldn't possibly win. Lith appeared in the middle of his second Death Zone. The mana thread which linked him with his spell gave him its exact position. You're right. He wiped out only one Death Zone, which means he can't use his eyes as often as I use my spells. Lith used invigoration to fill the remaining darkness cloud with endless mana as it moved inexorably toward its prey. True Bleskama's cursed both the Ranger's shrewdness and his own stupidity in a language that sounded like a choir of tormented souls. Lith had no access to the corridor anymore, but neither did he. The Baylor flew away, trying to buy as much time as he could. Unfortunately, the only passage remaining led to a dead end, and even though darkness magic was slow, it only took Death Zone a couple of seconds to reach the cornered creature. True Bleskama's used sheer willpower to force his black eye open, fighting the excruciating pain that moving the eyelid caused him. If Solus's mana sense worked properly, she would have seen that after conjuring the second pillar, the green core had turned gray. Baylor's didn't really have 4 mana cores, just one like every other natural being. What she had mistaken for extra mana cores were just masses of world energy that a Baylor would refine into his own mana and store it ready to be used. Baylor's eyes had an effect similar to invigoration, allowing them to draw the single elements which composed the world energy. Drawing so much and so fast came at a price. Tears of blood streamed down True Bleskama's chin as the raw world energy he was forcing to flow through his eye damaged his whole body. The pain was unbearable, but he knew that it would be fleeting, whereas death was permanent. I haven't lived this long just to die like this. He roared. The two spells clashed again, but this time Lith boosted his own with a steady flow of mana until the last second before taking cover. At first, his precautions seemed to be unnecessary. As soon as Lith's Death Zone started to fade, True Bleskama's closed his eye with an agonizing scream. Its pupil was almost completely white, and a small pool of blood had formed under the Baylor's feet. His breath was ragged from the effort of forcing so much world energy through his already exhausted focus and of withstanding the pain that such a desperate move involved. Yet True Bleskama's didn't wait for the enemy's next move and sought to regain the initiative. A suit of ice covered his upper body as he launched himself forward as fast as a freight train. My flaming eye is almost out of mana. If that scum forces me to use it a third time, I'll be as good as blind. Awakened or not, he cannot cast spells if I manage to corner him, he thought. Lith was waiting for him with his arms extended, drawing in the air mystical lines that were taking the shape of a small array. Trubleskama's recognized its runes and rushed at breakneck speed to interrupt the casting. Fire and water are all he has left. The best combo he can achieve with them would allow him to cook pasta, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. Lith inwardly grinned at his enemy falling for his third trap in a row. The forbidden array he had apparently almost completed was just a hologram. Lith couldn't afford to waste so much mana on a single enemy who was likely to respawn like in a badly balanced ARPG. When a gate suddenly opened in front of Trubleskamus, he was going too fast to change his direction in time. With only wings propelling him forward and no air magic, the faster he moved, the less precision of movement he had. The Baylor crashed against one of the most massive among the cell doors, triggering its defense mechanisms which unleashed a series of spells against their aggressor. Unfortunately, Lith wasn't aware that after decades of imprisonment, Trubleskamus knew them like the back of his hand. The owner of the lab not only lacked imagination in decorating his own house, but also in forge mastering. All the doors were imbued with the same base set of spells, plus a few specifically designed against the prisoner they were meant to hold. The Baylor managed to avoid most of the damage and move away from the door before the most powerful ones could activate. Even on foot, the creature was as fast as a cheetah, reaching the ranger in the blink of an eye. Lith could have warped away, but between the confined space and the Baylor's speed, his exit point was bound to be easily predictable. With the closest junction still sealed by the ice, he could only blink inside the dead, and the Baylor had just escaped from or moved back in an almost straight line. The former option was beyond idiotic, while the latter would buy him a second at best. Chapter 541. Lith unleashed a barrage of plague arrows, against which Trubleskamus had no choice but to tank them. The mana imbued inside his ice armor lessened the damage, but the residual darkness was still enough to make the Baylor stumble and lose most of his momentum. The creature refused to yield and lunged at Lith with a conjured ice greatsword. Lith switched to a two-handed grip while infusing the gatekeeper with fire and darkness magic. He sidestepped the incoming attack and performed a horizontal slash to the neck. Only then did Trubleskamus reveal that his moment of weakness was actually a ruse. He turned his tumble into a roll, dodging the gatekeeper and regaining his footing while his opponent was still off balance. The Baylor lunged at Lith again, who pivoted on his feet by using the momentum from his failed attack. The resulting spin wasn't enough to completely avoid the incoming strike, but it allowed him to adjust his stance and intercept the incoming blade. Lith aimed the gatekeeper at the greatsword's tip to push it away with minimum effort and create the opening he needed to win that fight. He almost couldn't believe his own eyes when the ice sword shattered on contact with the gatekeeper, revealing a flaming blade blooming underneath its surface. The ethereal fire blade ignored the bastard sword, keeping its trajectory unchanged. Despite their brutish appearance and berserk fighting style, Baylors weren't stupid. They were just so powerful that they usually didn't need clever strategies or tricks to dominate their opponents. Resorting to one wounded Trubleskamus' pride, but it was much better than the alternative. The fire sword crackled as it pierced the Skinwalker Amor's enchanted defenses, producing the sizzling sound of roasted meat when it bit Lith's flesh. Thanks to Lith's earlier small sidestep, the Baylor had been unable to strike at the heart and had to settle for the shoulder. Not even earth fusion was enough to prevent the mystical flames from burning everything on their path. Lith felt his left arm suddenly go limp. Even shutting down his pain receptors didn't help against his now labored breathing. Trubleskamus' blade had cooked his flesh, his bones, and part of his left lung in one fell swoop. "By my maker, do you need my help?" Solus asked while assessing the gravity of his injuries. "Thanks, but no. Your energy is limited, so it's better to save it for opponents in their reverted state." According to Rat Pack, Yasmo is a Baylor too, and he has access to his race's ancient powers. Trubleskamus is like a training ground for me. If I can't defeat him on my own, then it's better to call for reinforcements. Don't step in unless it's absolutely necessary. Litha's reply made Solus curse her weakness and wish for a way to improve her usefulness in battle. The lack of screams disappointed the Baylor, But his mood worsened when he saw the ranger blink away as a healing aura enveloped his body. Trubleskama's envied Lith for it, and hoped that Yasma would keep his word. The only reason Trubleskama's was still there was the promise of having his full might restored. Even if the abuse of my black eye and ramming against the door has weakened me somewhat, how did the human manage to avoid my strike like that? The answer to the Baylor's question was revealed when he attempted to give chase and finish Lith off before the light magic spell could take effect. Trubleskama's stumbled instead of sprinting as blinding pain spread through his body. Lith's previous failed attack hadn't been a complete failure after all. Trubleskama's roll had saved his head, but left his back and his giant wings exposed. Just like the Baylor, Lith had settled for a non-vital, yet significant target. Part of his right wing was gone, putting him off balance and allowing Lith to survive. Even though the Baylor could regenerate his wing, it would take him days, whereas the fight was likely to last less than one more minute. Lith's checkmate spears surrounded Trubleskama's, striking at him from every side. The Baylor was done blindly charging ahead and recognized immediately the trap lying ahead of him. With his wounded wing, his mobility had been crippled. He wasn't able to move fast enough to dodge them anymore. He could only use his flaming eye to destroy them at the risk of running out of fire mana, or conjure a defense made of ice that would act as a shield, but also as a cage. It would further restrict his movements and leave him exposed to lightning spells. Trubleskama snarled and opened his red eye, sprinting forward on all four. His envy toward Lith turned into unbridled rage, boosting the flame's temperature and destructive power. A pillar of blue fire cleared his path toward the ranger as the Baylor dodged the remaining ice spears. Lith saw trickles of blood streaming down the flaming eye and unleashed the Tier 5 spell Dark Ages. Black ice made from both water and darkness magic covered the ground as well as the walls, leaving only the silver doors exposed. It sapped Trubleskama's strength every time he touched it and forced him to slow down to not impale himself on the lances that randomly popped out of the ice from every direction. The growing crystals were quickly forming a wall in front of the Baylor, who had to slow down even further. The darkness infused in the ice not only made it more resistant to the flames by weakening them, but it was also released in the air as a noxious gas once the ice melted. When Trubleskama's finally reached Lith, his flames had died out, and so had his red eye. Lith then conjured several streams of lightning bolts, shooting them at random in front of him. The Baylor didn't even try to shield himself, just dodging whatever he could to cross the last few meters that separated them. Only then did he realize that Lith wasn't aiming because he had no need to. The entire floor was covered in water, and so was Trubleskama's. It was a perfect conductor which routed every bolt of lightning to its target, allowing Lith to focus on the power of his spell and to completely neglect controlling it. The Baylor gritted his teeth and used sheer willpower to resist the spasms that were ravaging his body. Prideless mutt. Fighting dirty is a game two can play. Trubleskama's activated his last eye, using the water Lith had conjured against him. The area around them was instantly filled with sharp icicles, which drained the water from the floor. They were both lightning rods which saved the Baylor from the thunderstorm and obstacles that limited the ranger's movements, allowing the creature to engage him hand to hand. Lith squinted his eyes from the surprise. He didn't expect such a degree of finesse and water manipulation from his opponent. The situation wasn't good. The back of the corridor was still sealed by his Dark Ages spell, and Blink's range didn't reach past the ice wall. The two of them were trapped inside a small cage filled with spikes that would harm only him. The Baylor's mana couldn't hurt his master. Lith backstepped while quick casting plague arrows and wind blades until he could feel the point of an icicle painfully stinging his back. Chapter 542. Trubleskama's roared in triumph. He had endured all those painful spells to make sure that his enemy would end exactly in that corner of the room. Agility and cunning meant nothing inside such a confined space. Only strength mattered, and he still had enough to uproot trees with just one hand. The Baylor was done underestimating the human. He jumped forward while swinging his giant fists down like hammers on Lith's left and right to cut off his escape routes. At the same time, his blue eye glowed with mana, making the icicles extend further. The trap was complete. The ranger's only choice was how he wanted to die, by fist, bite, or skewering. Lith switched them at the last second, making the ice spear that had been prickling his back pierce through Trubleskama's blue eye, brain, and skull. The Baylor's body spasmed several times, gurgling blood from the several puncture wounds the rest of the ice spears had caused. That was close. Lith sighed while cutting Trubleskama's head off with the gatekeeper, just to be safe. The Baylors are way too strong to face them head-on, and their eyes are weapons of mass destruction also capable of fine control over the elements. I almost fell for his mindless brute act, but unfortunately for him, I too like to be underestimated. Using my own conjured water against me was a smart move, exactly what I would have done in his shoes. That's why I used a tier 5 spell that used both water and darkness magic. Once the water was imbued with his mana, it couldn't hurt him, but the darkness was still mine. His lack of understanding of how tier 5 spells work was the deciding factor in his defeat. The barrage of spells Lith had employed while backstepping wasn't meant to harm to the Baylor so much as to keep him focused on Lith and not notice the black veins tainting his own spell. Lith used Invigoration to return to his peak condition while waiting for Rat Pack and studying Trubleskama's corpse. It didn't turn into smoke, allowing Lith to store him inside his pocket dimension. Now let's hope this master is a reasonable guy. Otherwise I'll call the army and I'll have them make this whole thing collapse. Lith thought. I found him. I found Master. Rat Pack's voice was brimming with joy. He was holding an old battered skull with several teeth missing and cracks along its surface. Oh great, another lich. Lith said while rolling his eyes. The undead had a life force weaker than a regular human, while his blood core, despite being almost completely red, was reduced to the size of a pea. Nice to meet you. My name is Scourge. Do you have the strength to explain to me what's going on? Lith's magical beast name was his best alias available. Even in their evolved forms, animals despised undead. They would never sell out one of their own in case the lich attempted something funny. Of course, dear Scourge. Liches didn't have any brain power to waste, so they would rarely care for names, especially if they belonged to an existence as fleeting as a human. It's so good to hear a voice which isn't mine or Trouble's. Is he already dead, or can I have the pleasure of inflicting him with some pain? Forge, the red light of undeath animating the eyes stared in delight at the blood spattered on the walls. Trouble is dead. Do you mind introducing yourself and telling me what happened? Lith had a hard time not laughing. Between the lich's weakened state and his memory, Lith's real identity was airtight. Right, sorry Sarge. I'm Zalgrish. As for what happened here, it's a bit of an embarrassing story, he said. Lith noticed that the cracks on the skull were disappearing and the missing teeth were popping up like mushrooms. As you surely know, being a lich isn't all fun and games. One of the most annoying things about it is the need to keep your phylactery at hand. Zalgrish's words made no sense to him, but Lith just nodded and let him talk. According to Kala, young liches would sooner or later go mad due to their prolonged isolation or at least lose their common sense until time stabilized their mental condition. Zalgrish seemed to be a textbook case. Either that, or he had lost it after becoming an undead. It holds half of our soul, so the farther we get from it, the weaker we become. I set up this lab at the fringes of my phylactery's range. I was at my full strength and at the same time far away enough to check on the progress of my work. This whole complex was supposed to work as a relay point for my phylactery. If my experiment succeeded, I would have been able to expand my area of activity to the entire Keller region. Zalgrish sighed. Damn it. Even becoming a lich is out of the question now. I always wondered why they never disguised their phylactery as a pebble and threw it in the ocean or something. I knew it was too good to be true. Lith thought. Everything was going fine. The mines provided me with all the silver I needed, the arrays amplified the signal, and my immortal minions provided me with an inexhaustible workforce. Zalgrish said. Wait a minute. Immortal minions? Lith echoed. Well yes. Lesser undead are too stupid, greater undead are too dangerous in the long run, while living beings are so annoying. You have to feed them, train them, and once they die you need to find a replacement. Rinse and repeat. To avoid the issue, I bound their souls to my phylactery, so that whatever happened to me would happen to them. It was the perfect solution. It guaranteed their loyalty and provided for most of their living expenses. Whenever of them dies, he is reborn with his memories. Whenever they are hungry, kill a few and let the others feast on the corpse. From farm to table, Zalbrich's maniacal laugh gave Lith the creeps. That's why some corpses disappeared upon death while others remained. His device resurrects them only if the body is destroyed, or rather, stripped to the bone. This creature is raving mad. No wonder his minions revolted. The question is, how? Lith thought. Sure, the procedure has a survival rate of 0.01%, but monsters spawn fast and nobody misses them. No harm, no foul. Or so I thought. Over time, I took 2 of my most intelligent minions as lab assistants. Danka the orc and his mastery over magic crystals have proven invaluable for increasing the power of my creations. It took me a while to kill him into submission, but once the deed was done, the sky was the limit for my forge mastering. Yasmo the Baler with his eyes was a perfect amplifier for my spells. Sure, they would explode from time to time, but nothing that a swift death couldn't fix. What I didn't take into account is that, since their souls are stored next to mine inside the phylactery, the repeated cycles of death and rebirth allowed them to feel the energy flow until they became able to manipulate it. Chapter 543. Those ungrateful dogs bid their time and waited for the moment when I was about to complete the amplification device to enact their plan. Yasmo attacked me while I was at my weakest, while Dankai used his crystal to redirect the energy from my phylactery to their bodies instead of mine. You can imagine the rest. Zalbrich said. His skeletal body was now complete, and he was standing on his own. The Lich's blood core had returned to a normal size, but over half of it was black. So, after defeating you, they discovered they shared your limited freedom of movement. Lith said as Zalbrich nodded in approval. It explains why they didn't leave despite having opened so many exits, but not what they are fighting for nor why they attacked the nearby city, alarming the residents. There was never any love between Danka and Yasmo. The only thing uniting them was their common enemy, me. Once they discovered how to use my life force to undo the effects of their race's fall, they wanted to kill each other. The first one who dies will be resurrected again, but will lose his grip on my life force, leaving the other one in possession of most of my powers. As for the attacks on the city, the explanation is quite simple. I chose only males as my slaves, to keep their number in check. Decades of sausage fest. With the monster's libido, it's no wonder they risked going so far despite their weakened state. They must have been looking for females. Lith thought. Why didn't trouble turn into smoke? He wasn't one of my servants, but one of my lab rats. With 3 eyes, he was quite a rare specimen, since Balers usually have just 1 or 2. I couldn't risk his life. I assume Yasmo didn't restore his strength because he was one of the few that could leave for good. Zalbrich said. Only a few more questions. Lith said. What are you planning to do? And more importantly, are you willing to compensate me for my troubles? Well, dear Marge, in my weakened state, I can take on my minions, but not their generals. As long as the amplifier is active, all the energy coming and going from my phylactery is under their control, while I'm stuck in the condition I was when they overpowered me. My plan is to shut down the device, get my strength back, and kill those bastards for good. I just need to touch my phylactery to banish their souls and send them into oblivion. As for your reward, Zalbrich walked to one of the open silver doors. A simple touch of his hand depowered it, and another one took it off its hinges. Weakened or not, the Lich was still quite powerful. Consider this in advance. Lith stored the door inside his pocket dimension, nodding in agreement. Yet he had no intention of trusting such a deranged creature. There was no telling what the Lich would do once he regained his full powers. At the same time, turning down his help would have been foolish. Now that Lith knew about his opponent's limitations, worst-case scenario, he could always warp to safety and wait for the army. The 2 ringleaders would leave the complex and risk dying by his hand, while the weakened Lich wasn't his match there, let alone if they fought near Jambel, away from the amplifier. Where is the device? Lith asked. On the 4th floor, but we better get moving. Without trouble constantly breaking me apart as a hobby, Danka and Yasmo will have already noticed that I'm back at. Zalbrich waved at himself. Let's call this humiliating. Inferior form my peak condition. He sighed. As I already told you, Bart, the three of us are linked. They are like dams that prevent the mana from my phylactery from flowing into me. I doubt they will come here in person, but their lieutenants are likely to be on their way. Lith cursed as he took point, moving towards the stairs. Master, Rat Pack's so happy to see you. Ranger and his bright lady Scary. The little creature seemed to have gotten his spunk back. He looked at Lith with eyes full of disdain. Enough of your nonsense, Rat Pack. First, stealth is our best ally. Second, I told you countless times, ghosts don't exist. Lith didn't know whether to laugh or cry at an undead who didn't believe in supernatural. But Master, she right here. She has very long hair, all dressed in gold, and with many chains binding her. He said while pointing the air above Lith's right shoulder. Can he really see me? Solus was astonished. Aside from the chains, the description fitted her. Sounds familiar. Can you describe her to me? Lith never stopped moving, looking left and right with life vision to avoid the enemies patrolling the 7th floor. She very tall. Rat Pack said. Good news, whatever he sees, it's not you. You're many things, but tall is not one of them. He's just delirious. Lith thought in relief. You jerk. I'm tall by his standards. With her 1.54 meters, 5 feet 1 inch, Solus was way taller than Rat Pack, who was just 1.3 meters, 4 feet 3 inches. Is she this big, with blonde floating hair and a fat belly? Lith's words made Solus swear like an angry truck driver. It's not my fault if you don't have any other relevant features. Yes, and Rat Pack doesn't know. Dress cover her. Okay, now I'm positive he's delirious. No, think about it. Solus said. I'm in my ring form, so what he sees could be my soul, my real appearance. Ask him about my eyes, my face, everything. Can you describe her to me? Lith couldn't refuse her request, even though he found it ridiculous. She very ugly. Rat Pack made Solus almost cry. She like you. Her brown eyes too big, ears too big, and her face creepy. She looks kind. After a while, Lith and Solus both realized that Rat Pack used himself as a standard, making all humans ugly in his eyes. When he found even Tista's hologram disgusting, Solus sighed in relief. This moron can't distinguish Camilla from the Queen. He's of no use. Lith thought. Then, he asked him about what kind of dress the bright lady was wearing and if her chains had anything unusual. Both answers surprised Solus and Lith. According to Rat Pack, Solus was wearing a golden Roman toga and sandals. It was an attire outdated for centuries that Lith only knew about from the pictures in Mogur's history books. Chains all unusual. Rat Pack said. She bound by 2 kinds of them. One is big and bind lady to you. Other one is thinner and restrain her. 2 thin chains are broken, and she keeps hammering a 3rd. Chain makes sparks but hold, so lady never stops. How many chains are left? Lith's mind was spinning at top gear, but the only thing that came to him was the gemstones that appeared on her gauntlet form every time that Solus unlocked a new ability. She had recently developed a second one of which he had yet to make sense. Chapter 544. 4. You believe Rat Pack? He asked. Yes. From your description, she reminds me of an old friend of mine who passed away long ago. Lith nodded. Then, to Zalbrish he asked, how can he see ghosts? What kind of creature is Rat Pack? It would be nice if he could. The Lich sighed. It would mean that at least he isn't a complete failure. Rat Pack is a chimera. I made him by assembling the corpses of an elf child and a baler. Then, I used necromancy to raise the corpse as a vampire. He was supposed to be the ultimate being, an immortal, natural shapeshifter vampire in perfect tune with the world energy like an elf, and with a baler's evil eyes, capable of amplifying each of his spells. Instead, he kept the build of the child and the inability to handle the world energy of the balers. Becoming a vampire messed things up even more because neither elves nor balers usually become undead. That's why Rat Pack is Rat Pack. That said, ghosts do not exist. They are just a superstition, whereas undead are magical creatures, and magic is science. All undead can be killed and need to feed, but ghosts? What could they possibly eat? How could you destroy something that has no body? If ghosts were real, with all the people that die every day on Mogur, there would be more undead than living. Believe me, Snart, there is no return from death. The sadness in his voice surprised Lith. Whoever she was, no matter how important she was to you, she's gone. The sooner you accept it, the better. Rat Pack is funny and loyal, but he is not the sharpest tool in the shed. Yet Rat Pack's words triggered something inside Solus. For a moment, she spaced out as unknown images and sounds flooded her mind. At first, she was running away from something. She had no idea what it was, but she knew that stopping or stumbling meant death. The vegetation of the woods kept whipping her face, and a few pebbles had gotten inside her sandals, hurting her feet with every step she took. Her chest felt heavy, her breath was ragged, yet she didn't dare to slow down. Then she was watching the sunset together with a woman so tall that she seemed like a giant, someone she called Mom. Solus barely reached her hips and was clinging to the woman's hand that was much bigger than her own. "Stop daydreaming, child," a cranky feminine voice said. "You can't become the next ruler of the flames if you don't focus on the forge." "Yes, Master Menadion," Solus's voice replied as the purple flame in front of her shattered, returning her to Zalgrish's underground lab. Lith shared all the fear, the love, and the admiration she felt as the fleeting memories passed, but had no idea what was causing them until she shared her visions with him. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" she asked. "Yes. As I've always told you, you are a person, not a thing. No matter if you were born human, beast, or tower. The moment you gained feeling and self-awareness, you were a person to me. The only real revelation is that your memories aren't entirely lost." Lith replied. They both had hoped that, since she still remembered what the complete tower looked like and the passing of time after her late master's demise, Solus could recover part of her past together with her powers. Yet after so many years with no sign of improvement, they had relinquished that thought. At least until that day. Now Solus could remember picking out a dress among many and the feeling of a silver hammer in her hand. They were too faint to be memories. They were more like impressions left by an action performed so many times to have left a mark in her subconscious. Solus didn't let herself be swayed by the joy those images brought her. On the contrary, Master Menadion's words made her focus even more on their predicament. "Lith, we need a plan," she said. "To make one, we need information and rest. Have Zalgrish open one of the rooms for you. Remember that you have been fighting non-stop ever since we entered the underground complex." Lith nodded. Even though he had used invigoration only twice, healing his wounds had taken a toll on his body. He needed to eat to restore his natural stamina. Zalgrish didn't like being ordered around, but without Lith his only asset was Rat Pack. He could only suck it up and open one of the doors on the 7th floor. After making sure no one had followed them, Lith sat down and took some food out of his pocket dimension. "I get the part about shutting down the device, but how do you plan to do it? If it's the key to their power and they know of your escape, it's likely to be heavily guarded," Lith said while chewing beef jerky. "What plan? You were so confident that I was just following your lead, dear Garb. It's not my problem if something goes wrong. Rat Pack and I cannot die." The Lich shrugged. Lith took some deep breaths to calm himself. Suddenly, the underground complex looked more like a tomb than a magnificent loot crate. "This idiot is even more deranged than I thought. I need to contact the army as my backup plan. Worst case scenario, they destroy the complex. The Lich returns to wherever his phylactery is, and I can stage my death to get plausible deniability. If I make Zalgrish believe I'm dead due to the lab's collapse, he will not resent me," he thought. "I don't get why Borg is so nervous." Zalgrish thought. "Worst case scenario, I'll make the arrays surrounding the lab collapse and flatten the mountain. Sure, I'll lose my lab and Borg will lose his life, but he's just a human. That way, I get my powers back and destroy the device. It's a win-win. At least for me." Mean minds did indeed think alike. "What kind of weapons do your minions have at their disposal?" Lith asked. "Only those I made for the kitchen staff. It's unbelievable how they struggled to butcher daily specials. I had to forge a few tools because they refused to give up. Some monsters are tough to kill barehanded, and the meals ended being delayed." "What about the treasury? Or the armory?" "Double lock. To open them, they require my mana, to which sadly Yasmo and Danka have access, and a combination. I never shared it with anyone, not even Rat Pack, so they should be safe." Zalgrish drummed his fingers on the ground. There was something he was missing. "Oh yeah? They're not proper weapons, but they could use the excavation and lab tools. They were never intended to be used in battle, so their effects are simple, but they are quite powerful. That's just great. Lith said, can you please tell me that you know what the abilities are of all the monsters who reverted to their pre-fallen state? I need at least one piece of good news. Sorry, but no. It was an unexpected development, and they never bothered to share their discoveries with me, except when they used their newfound powers to kick the crap out of me. What I can tell you is that Danka has somehow shrunk his purple crystal into a ring. It allows him to stir the surrounding world energy as if it's a soup and to cast Tier 5 spells non-stop. And he never learned Tier 5 magic. Chapter 545. As for Yasmo, he went from a two-eyed Baylor to a six-eyed one. The change made him physically weaker than before, but the raw power of each one of his spells is unparalleled. Fuck it. I need some fresh air, Lith said as he opened a warp steps, which led as far from the lab as he could manage. Even if somehow someone followed him, they would be so weak that he could pulverize them in the blink of an eye. Rat Pack, the human seems to be a little touchy. Are you sure he is the strongest, smartest, bravest champion you could find? Zalgrish asked. Of course, Master. What makes you so sure about it? He only survivor. All others died, so he best won, Rat Pack said. Zalgrish slapped Rat Pax on the back of his head, wondering if Lamb would ever return. While the Lich was cursing the gods for giving him Rat Pack, Lith took out his army communicator the moment the warp steps closed behind him and called his handler. I've disposed of the next unit of monsters. Jambel is safe for now, but I've got bad news. The dungeon has turned out to be the abandoned lab of an ancient mage. It's not just their numbers that are a problem, but also the fact that some of them are mutated. Mutated how? Camilla asked. That word reminded her of the past monster outbreaks, making her worry. They are not like the wargs. Lith replied, almost reading her mind. Their behavior is like I expected it to be, only their abilities are boosted. Either it's selective breeding or magical enhancement of sorts, I don't know. The situation is very volatile. There are 2 dungeon masters, not just one. An ogre shaman and a Baylor. Lith could almost hear Camilla flinching on the other side of the conversation. Lith was reporting nearly the truth, sticking to what Lord Wylan had already reported. Is there really a Baylor? Camilla asked. More than one. Lith took out Trouble's body as proof. What's worse, they have access to some magical tools they managed to repurpose into weapons. So far the 2 groups were too busy fighting among themselves. But if they get out of there, we're talking about at least 1,000 mutated monsters armed to the teeth. What's your plan? The more Camilla heard, the more worried she became. Why the heck did I start an argument about his past? I don't want our last conversation to be a stupid quarrel, she thought. The complex has no array blocking dimensional magic, so I can get in and out of it fast. My plan is to create a distraction and kill the 2 leaders. If I manage to cut off the head of the snake, the rioting caused by the power vacuum should do the rest. I know I can do it, but I want you to keep a group of wardens on standby. If you don't hear from me within a few hours, send them to these coordinates and have them bring the whole complex down. Lith then confirmed the position of the entrances Baron Wylan had found to her and explained the nature of the arrays surrounding the place, making the wardens' work much easier. If only I was a better warden and there wasn't a frigging lich involved, I could do it myself. This way, when everything starts collapsing, Zalgrish will have no reason to suspect me. Copy that, Ranger Verhen. Please, remember that you can always pull out and wait for reinforcements. Camilla's hologram appeared suddenly. Her voice was professional and detached as always, but her eyes contained a desperate plea. I wish I could. That part at least was true. There's a big snowstorm incoming. If we don't settle this now, Jambel and its citizens will be completely isolated for days. Bad weather is nothing to an orc shaman. The monsters would slaughter them like lambs. Or rather, I can't live with a lich breathing down my neck for the destruction of his lab. He actually thought. Copy that, Camilla said. Before the hologram could completely disappear, Litha's civilian amulet pulled at his consciousness. Are you insane calling me from work? Your supervisor will flay you for that. Who cares? Are you all right? You have never called for backup before, not even for the Black Star. Be honest with me, how bad is it? She said. Damn it. Now I understand why on Earth relationship in the workplace were frowned upon. Lying to my handler is one thing. Doing it to my fear-stricken girlfriend is another. Lith thought. Pretty bad. Don't worry, though. If shit hits the ceiling, I'll warp out of there in the blink of an eye. Even a vengeful lich was better than a dead ranger. Please, be safe. Call me as soon as you're done with the mission, no matter the hour, okay? Lith nodded, knowing that no words could reassure her. He closed the call and warped back to Zalgrish. Did you have any brilliant ideas during your stroll? The lich sneered. Actually, yes. Why don't we take a few weapons from your armory to make our lives easier? Lith asked. Because if I imprint them with my mana, Danka and Yasmo could use them too if they get their hands on them. I don't trust Rat Pack to use anything more dangerous than a broom, and whatever you imprint I would have no way to get back. Unless I were to kill you, of course. What if you consider it the rest of my payment? Lith couldn't refute that logic, but he could propose an alternative. And what would prevent you from abandoning me here? Maybe even taking a few souvenirs? It's not like I could stop you even if I wanted. I prefer to keep you motivated, Nolan. As Lith had predicted, they found little surveillance on the road to the 4th floor, where the device was located. Unfortunately, it was because most of the guards had been recalled to right in front of the lab's door. The orc shaman and the Baylor hated each other, but they knew that if their former master were to regain his powers, he would turn their eternal lives into a living hell. Lith, Zalgrish, and Ratpack were stuck near the stairway leading from the 5th to the 4th underground floor. How does your minions' resurrection process work? I need to know if fighting them is worth the effort or if it would just be a waste of time and mana. Lith said, It works just like mine. Zalgrish replied. His condescending tone showed once again how the lich considered such information to be common sense. If my body gets completely destroyed, it takes me between 1 and 3 days to be regenerated near my phylactery back to my peak condition. The stronger one is, the longer it takes the phylactery to store enough word energy. It shouldn't take it more than a few minutes to restore those weaklings. Yet remember that if you don't destroy their bodies, they will remain corpses for a couple of hours. That's the optimal time required to field dress and consume them. It should be more than enough to get in and shut down the device. You're worrying for nothing. I don't think so. We don't know who's inside the lab. Unfortunately, the lab was so full of powerful magics that life vision was as useless as mana sense. Chapter 546. And if they stall us long enough, reinforcements could destroy the bodies we left behind. If that happens, we'd end up surrounded and killed in no time. Luckily for me, I've got a better idea, Lith said. He was so used to relying on Solus's mana sense and on life vision that using fire vision felt wrong. It was one of Lith's oldest skills that he now used mostly to cook since life vision had proved to be superior in combat. Fire vision granted him the magical equivalent of thermal goggles, allowing him to see in the dark in a scale of colors according to the temperature of his surroundings. The lab was lit by light crystals that didn't emit heat, otherwise he would have been blinded. Fire vision provided no information about the strength of the enemy, but still could identify their position and size. Lith stood still for a while, studying the patrol's timing and routes. I can't afford to make mistakes. One false step and we'll be swarmed. Meeting Ratpack was a blessing in disguise. Without his information, I would have taken my sweet time opening the doors and who knows what could have happened. Lith thought. He worried more about the orc shaman than the Baylor. As far as he knew, only the former could block his dimensional magic thanks to orcs' innate ability to manipulate mana crystals. Dimensional magic was a powerful tool. Lith relied on it for both offense and defense. Most of his contingency plans were impossible without it. After he was sure that he had a clear understanding of their situation, Lith went upstairs and followed one of the patrols. He cursed when he saw that they were all orcs reverted to their elven state. They moved lithe as cats, with lean limbs more fitting for a professional dancer than the brutes they were. The enemies would have spotted Lith's group immediately if not for the hush zone and the smell-canceling spell he had enveloped them with. Lith kept several spells at the ready while intently following the patrol movements with fire vision. The moment the orcs met a patrol of reverted ogres, Lith unleashed the spirit magic tendrils he had prepared and snapped their necks. Then, he waved his hand, making a warp steps appear below their feet. It moved the corpses into one of the cells on the 7th floor, of which Lith had memorized the coordinates, and closed the door before leaving. 10 elite enemies were swallowed by the dimensional corridor and locked away in one fell swoop. No one could destroy their bodies now. Quick! We must move before the other patrols notice their disappearance. Lith said. Zalgrish nodded at what's-his-name ingenuity and followed his lead. Together, they quickly cleaned the external corridors of patrols. Even in his weakened state, Zalgrish had no problems using water magic to freeze his opponents and dimensional magic to lock them away. Once they reached the lab's nearest door, Lith made way for the Lich. He didn't need life vision to know the door was enchanted. The many mana crystals fused into its surface couldn't be just for decoration. Zalgrish raised his skeletal right hand in front of the solid silver door, making a holographic spiral made of runes appear. "Interesting," he said after the door refused to open. "They have managed to tamper with my code. I wonder if their newfound intelligence comes from reverting the effects of the falling or from mastering the connection with my essence now inhabiting their bodies. The latter possibility is kind of disturbing." The tinge of worry in the Lich's voice made Lith even more paranoid than usual. While Zalgrish worked the door's command panel, he checked their surroundings again and prepared a few extra spells. "My preparation was meticulous and the execution of my plan flawless, yet I can't help being worried. If Danka and Yasmo really are this smart, then they're bound to be close," he thought. To make matters worse, they just need to tamper with one of the elements composing the world energy to seal my dimensional magic. There are too many things that can go wrong. Solus, be ready to intervene. She was careful to shape-shift slowly from under his sleeve, while the Lich was still focused on the door. When her arm protector form manifested, she made it appear as though he had simply taken it out from a dimensional item. Zalgrish finally cracked the code and turned towards Lith. "We're in," the Lich said while looking at him like it was the first time they met. "You seem different somehow. Have you done something with your hair?" The door opened, revealing the biggest forge mastering lab Lith had ever seen. It extended as far as the eye could see, taking up the entire floor. There was no room or wall separating the various sections of the lab, only pillars to keep the ceiling standing. The stone walls had been carved into bookshelves, and each one of them was filled with ancient tomes or scrolls. The richly decorated spines of the books were the only element of color in the otherwise honey-hued stone surface. A blue translucent force field covered all the bookshelves, protecting their content from the energy employed and released during the forge mastering experiments. Lith counted at least 20 forges. Forge was how forge masters referred to the silver tables they used for their work. Every forge inside the lab was covered in runes of power, which formed magic circles still pulsing with blue energy. Some circles were complete, others were works in progress, but all of them had an object resting on their center, ready to be enchanted. Much to Lith's surprise, the books were arranged according to a color code that went from black to white, going through the complete light spectrum. What the heck? Could he have split the books according to the mana core required? Solus, are you sure he isn't an awakened? Lith was already worried about orc shamans always being awakened once. The idea that even the Baylor could become one by accessing Zalgrish's memories was enough to reconsider his plan and call the army to have them raise the area. Pretty sure. So far he has chanted all of his spells, and his mana flow is static. Either he is a fake mage, or he has lost his status of awakened together with most of his powers. My money on the former. She replied. What does the color code mean? Lith asked. He needed to make sure it was just a coincidence. What code? That would be an idiotic thing to do. The books are in alphabetical order. I had them bound that way so that each forge has its own room. Zalgrish walked double time towards the forge at the northwest end of the room. Unlike the other silver tables, there was nothing on it except 5 concentric circles of runes that glowed with a golden light instead of the common blue. Where's the device? Lith said while sighing in relief. You're looking at it. The Lich replied. Only amateurs use common silver tables for a masterpiece. True forge masters use adamant. It conducts mana as well as silver, but it's hundreds of times more resilient. Plus, you can shapeshift it into any form you may need. It makes it much easier to inscribe runes with perfect symmetry on the vessel for your spell, since you have an ample surface that you can later rearrange in the shape and size of your choosing. Chapter 547. At a wave of his hand, the silver table turned into a giant ring as big as a double door. Mystical energies flowed from the air into the construct as the space inside the ring was filled by a red and black essence that Lith recognized as part of a blood core. I don't like it. Why is there no one in here? Lith asked while using all of his senses to scan the area. because the security level was set so that anyone without my energy signature would die upon entering. At those words, Lith conjured several barriers as the gems on Solus' arm protector form glowed with mana. Relax. I've disabled them. Zalgrish laughed at the ranger's panic. You idiot. Doesn't that mean that every one of those who share your essence could be waiting for us? Lith rebuked. Oh, please. You're simply. Zalgrish's amusement disappeared as dozens of reverted monsters wielding magical tools appeared from thin air. Right. Damn it. The Lich waved his hand again, causing the ring to shape-shift back into a table. Not so fast. A deep and melodious voice said. Two humanoid creatures appeared right next to the device. One was wearing a gray magician's robe, leaving only his head and hands exposed. He was 1.78 meters, 5 feet 10 inches, tall, with light brown skin and shoulder-length golden hair. His pointy ears parted his hair, revealing a slender neck which together with his delicate features gave him a feminine look. Only his pupils, flaming from the red mana coursing within, betrayed his real nature. On the ring finger of his right hand rested a purple ring made of crystal. Now that Danka had activated it, it was filled with so much mana that it eclipsed the rest of the lab to Solus's mana sense. Whatever it is, it's not just a simple crystal. Solus tried to make sense of what she was staring at. It contains multiple different energy signatures, like it's composed of several living beings compressed together. How could an orc create a cursed object in so little time? The answer was that he didn't. Whenever an orc shaman used a powerful mana crystal long enough, they would leave an imprint on it. Their successors, if talented enough, could use such imprints to access part of their ancestors' experience and their most used spells. Recalling the spells of a single shaman was a hard and complex matter because the further in the past they had lived, the fainter their trace was and the harder it was to find it. Danka was different. After recovering the abilities his race possessed before their fall, he had discovered that he was able to activate all of the imprints left by his forefathers. It was the residual mana from the past shamans that Solus had mistaken for life forces. Danka was using part of the Lich's undead energies to keep them permanently active and have access to Tier 4 and 5 spells. The residual mana, mixed with the undead life force, gave those echoes from the past a semblance of life. Danka believed he had conjured his ancestors' spirits and that they were guiding him from the netherworld, bestowing their knowledge upon him. Unfortunately, the truth was that by having so many memories flooding his mind along with centuries of hatred and rage, Danka was on the verge of madness. He was constantly shaking his head, but not because of the effort from undoing Zalgrish's will. He was trying to make the voices in his head shut up long enough for him to achieve his goal. The second creature was bare-chested, wearing only pants. Yasmo was 2.3 meters, 7 feet 7 inches, tall, with pale blue skin and a cascade of long silver hair reaching his waist. He had the body of a Greek god, with muscles that looked like they had been chiseled rather than trained. He had 6 eyes on his face and 6 feathered wings emerging from his back. Each one of the eyes was a different color, based on the element inhabiting it, and so were his wings. The eyes on the creature's forehead were red and blue, those under his eyebrows were black and white, while those on his cheekbones were brown and yellow. Both Lith and Solus wondered if there was any connection between Baelor's and Litha's hybrid form. Aside from lacking a 7th one on the forehead, the Baelor's eyes were positioned exactly the same way. The wings on his back followed the same pattern as the eyes and seemed to be made of pure elemental energies. Power down this damn lab, or they'll use it against us, Lith said as he conjured several streams of lightning to disperse the enemies and stop whatever Danka was doing. Yasmoa's yellow wing crackled like thunder, and suddenly Litha's spells were drawn to it like the wing was a powerful magnet. The yellow wing stored the energy and purified it from Litha's mana before transferring it to the yellow eye. Humans should not fight their gods, Yasmo said. His voice was quiet and solemn. There was no arrogance nor threat in it. He was only stating what he considered to be the truth. The dryad ogres joined their hands, forming a wall of vines that quickly surrounded Lith as several reverted trolls activated the tools in their 4 hands to strike him down through the openings their companions created for them. Each troll wielded 2 golden staves, each with what looked like a ruby the size of an apple on their tops, which emitted jet streams of blue flames. While Zalgrish and Danka were engaged in a battle of sheer willpower, Rat Pack fled from the scene and hid inside the closest shadow, hoping that no one would notice him. The Lich's blood core was diminished, but his mind was intact. Even though Danka was several times stronger than him and wielded the same energies, keeping them in check was a constant struggle for the orc. Zalgrish had no such problem. It was his energy, his lab. They both responded to his thoughts like they were an extension of his body. What are you waiting for? Destroy him, Danka ordered to his orc elves. He was well aware that if it weren't for the purple crystal on his finger, he would have already been bested. The mining tools the reverted orcs were equipped with looked like silver rods, about 1 meter, 3 feet long, with topaz embedded along their sides. They amplified the mana they were imbued with to generate energy blades capable of easily cutting through rock. The orcs had spent countless hours in the mines, slaving away for the Lich. Their mastery with the cutting tools was equaled only by their resentment for him. So as soon as Danka gave the order, they had the rods in their hands shape their mana into the form of a mace and struck mercilessly at Zalgrish from every side. After being pulverized by trouble for months, what such weapons could inflict to the Lich was merely discomfort. His pride was almost crushed seeing his creations used against him, seeing his slaves dare to raise their hand against their master. Almost. Now that he was so close to the device, which Danka was so kindly keeping half open, all the energy he would lose due to the wounds inflicted upon him would be absorbed by the ring and returned to him in barely a second. Countless possibilities appeared in Zalgrish's mind, and a cruel smile would have formed on his face if only he had won. The situation is much better than I predicted. Mario is unlikely to survive, but hired help is always expendable. The Lich thought. Chapter 548. Zalgrish ignored the pain from his skeletal limbs being constantly crushed and regenerated, focusing on the adamant forge. Yasmo and Danka are too close to the amplifier for me to open the control panel and shut it down. Danka's obstinacy to keep it open means they needed me to activate it. Their control over my essence must be poor. He thought. I don't get why Luigi wants me to shut down the lab, but since he is likely to die, I might as well grant his last wish. The Lich stomped his foot on the power line of the array fueling the lab. Everything that didn't have his own pseudo-core went dark. We're back, baby. Lith and Solus thought in unison as most of the interference from their surroundings disappeared, making life vision and mana sense useful again. Lith had managed to survive up to that point only thanks to his multiple-layered barrier. The wall of vines made up by the reverted ogres limited his movements, and the trolls would strike at him with their enchanted tools whenever he tried to escape the encirclement. Their staves emitted blue flames which reached thousands of degrees, capable of turning a man into charcoal with just one hit. Even when they missed, they made the air too hot to be breathable unless Lith cooled it down with water magic. To make matters worse, up to that point Yasmo had neutralized the spells Lith had conjured to defend himself with his wings. Not only did he almost cause Lith's death multiple times, but also all of his eyes were brimming with stored energy. I'll deal with him later. First I need to get rid of the trolls. Lith thought as he blinked right behind one of the reverted creatures. With life vision working again, the wall of vines no longer blocked his line of sight. Behind you. Yasmo warned them as the ranger came out from his exit point. Lith had Solus keep an eye on him. He couldn't afford any distraction in the task at hand. His arms moved like snakes, striking at each troll multiple times. The trolls laughed at his wasted efforts and unleashed new jets of blue flames. With their thick skin and powerful muscles, that kind of attacks didn't even tickle. On the contrary, they felt full of vigor. Or so they thought before falling to their knees, writhing in agony. Lith's hits were weak because he knew brute strength and normal magic were pointless. Normal trolls' regenerative abilities made them hard to kill, whereas those in front of him would resurrect in a matter of minutes. Lith had to save his strength for and from Yasmo. He couldn't afford the Baylor stealing any more of his mana, so the strikes were merely a vessel, each one imbued with a light spell. Healing magic was the troll's bane, overloading their already too efficient metabolism that caused their perpetual hunger. Lith's spells had pushed them to the brink of starvation. Their massive bodies shrunk like each passing second was a day spent fasting. Impressive. Yasmo gave him a nod of approval. Let's see how you fight when even your eyes betray you. Yasmo revealed that he was holding a small mirror in his left hand. He pointed it at the wall of living vines and then to himself, making them both disappear. There was no dimensional door, and I can still hear the ogre dryads slithering on the floor. Is that invisibility? Lith asked. It must be that mirror's effect. Solus pondered. My guess is that it uses gravity magic to bend the light. That must be how they hid themselves waiting for Zalgrish to activate the device. Thanks for the explanation, but how does that help? It doesn't. The field it creates is so fine that not even mana sense can pinpoint them. I can only give you an approximate location. Solus said as Lith felt a living wave crushing against him. The vines coiled around his body, turning visible once again. They tried to dig their way through his skin and orifices. Gross. They didn't even buy me a drink first. Lith activated his Tier 5 spell, Setting Sunday. It generated a globe made of darkness, imbued flames around him that engulfed all of the Dryad's ogres attacking him. The two elements were fused together, allowing the dark energies to move at a speed that would otherwise be impossible. Setting Sun was a perfect offense and defense that would stay up until all of its mana was exhausted, but Lith didn't plan to use it for long. I thought you said that ogres' vines are resistant to fire. Wouldn't it have been better to use Ice Age instead? Solus asked. That's exactly why I'm using it. Just like with the trolls, I don't want to kill them, just to make them suffer. Otherwise, they'll just pop up again in an endless loop. Lith explained. The darkness magic quickly sapped the ogre's vitality, while the fire magic of Setting Sun inflicted them blinding pain, but dealt little damage. The moment the vines writhed in agony off his body, Lith expanded the sphere of black flames outwards, revealing Yasmo's position. As the Baelor's gravity sheath dissolved, Lith could see Yasmo's red and black wings brimming with power. He was trying to rob Lith of his spell, but to no avail. Over the years, Lith had fought opponents more powerful than he was many times. It had almost cost him his life, but at the same time, the experiences had given him the opportunity to learn from them. He had devised Setting Sun after fighting Nalier, while Thrud Griffin and Manohar had taught him how to defeat an opponent capable of draining his mana. Just like the vortex generated by Thrud's meat puppets, Yasmo's wings couldn't affect a spell animated by its caster's willpower. Lith had understood the nature of the reverted Baelor's powers after he had literally stolen his thunder, but feigned ignorance to lull Yasmo's conceit. Such a powerful spell and no chant. You must be an awakened. Surprise and joy appeared on his face despite the black flames withering his skin. Lith had no time to waste bantering. He focused Setting Sun on his fingertips, making it rotate faster and faster, until he released it against the Baelor in the form of a giant spinning thorn. Meanwhile, the battle between Zalgrish and Danka took an unexpected turn too. Hey, idiot. Do you know the origin of the term lich? Zalgrish said. He grabbed one of the orc elves who, in the heat of the battle, had fallen prey to the orc's natural bloodlust and come within arm's reach. A simple touch was all Zalgrish needed to leech the vitality of an opponent, but this time that wasn't his goal. The undead life force Danka had shared with his lieutenant recognized its only true master and returned to him. Thanks for the meal. Each reverted orc contained only a small portion of Zalgrish's power, but it was enough to tip the scale of the battle in his favor. The orc elves attempted to escape, but the lich only needed one of the cantrips he kept at the ready to stop them. Some even conjured world energy to commit suicide, yet it only backfired. They were closer to Zalgrish than to the amplifier, so the undead energy released upon their death ended up being siphoned by him. Chapter 549. Ragged clothes appeared on Zalgrish's skeleton as well as flesh and muscles, restoring part of his original appearance. Danka started to panic. His willpower was consumed on too many fronts. He had to keep at bay the voices in his head, prevent the amplifier from shutting down or lose any chance to control it, and fight the undead energies within him which were trying to return to their rightful vessel. How the heck does Yasmo control them so effortlessly? I'm a natural awakened, whereas liches use fake magic, and Baelors are limited to Tier 3 magic. Why am I losing against a pile of bones? He thought. The answer was actually simple. In his arrogance, Danka had spread his resources too thin. As for Zalgrish, he had prepared plenty of spells on his way to the lab. Until he lost his focus or run out of spells, he was as powerful as an awakened. To add insult to injury, he only needed to beckon to call back his energies, and the closer he got to Danka, the harder it was for the orc to keep them in check. Zalgrish was solely focused on the shaman, so Yasmo could afford to let the undead energies escape from his body just to capture them again with his black wing. Danka called upon his ancestors to conjure the ancient elven tier 5 spell, Lighthouse. It trapped the lich inside a hard light construct shaped like a cube that contained a small tornado. Zalgrish wasn't afraid of being ripped to shreds by the violent air currents, so much as he was surprised by the offensive light spell. He had never seen one before. Not bad, but let's see if this thing is as strong as it looks. The lich snapped his fingers to release the tier 5 spell Raging Sunday. It filled the cube with a blast of purple flames that dispersed the air currents forming the tornado, adding the orc's spell power to its own. The resulting explosion made the sides of the cube crack as the lich took control of the shockwaves it generated with air magic and sent them back and forth against the weak points the two colliding spells had created. It was an impossible strategy for any creature, living or not. Zalgrish could ignore the damage he received only because he had no vitals. "You fool," he laughed as his bones kept cracking and healing. "You should have let the device shut down. It would have taken me hours instead of seconds to regain my strength. The closer I get to it, the stronger I become. It's like being next to my phylactery to me." "Thanks for the information, old man," Danka replied. He sent the cube rolling to the opposite side of the room, following it closely to not lose control of his spell. If darkness magic's weakness was its speed, for light magic it was its range. "But I need the amplifier to take everything from you, just like you took everything away from me. My dignity, my honor, even my life. I'll use your life's work to escape from this cage and torture you until the end of time." "What a coincidence. It's the end of time o'clock for you. Right, Rat Pack?" At those words, Danka realized to have brought the lich in the spot he had seen the small maggot disappear. Rat Pack emerged from the shadows, stabbing Danka with his coward's knife multiple times before the shaman could even turn around. The enchanted blade was a long dagger for a man, but it was a short sword to Rat Pack. Zalgrish had infused it with light and darkness magic. The darkness spell acted as a venom against living beings and as an acid against everything else. The light element closed the wounds the moment they were opened. The forced healing would sap its victim's stamina and accelerate the spreading of the venom through their body by enhancing their metabolism. Danka managed to stop the darkness spell with one of his own, but he was helpless against the light magic which broke both his focus and his spell. As soon as the cube shattered, Zalgrish dashed forward and grabbed the shaman's face with his hands as he summoned back the undead energies that had been stolen from him. "Thanks, you idiot. I would have never escaped from that thing on my own," Zalgrish said. "You're welcome, master," Rat Pack said while turning into a puff of smoke to avoid the lightning bolts the orc had unleashed trying to get rid of the small pest. "Not you. I mean, yes, you helped me, but it was sarcasm." Zalgrish sighed at the ruined moment. He had been on his last leg, focusing all of his remaining mana on the healing process to pretend that he was stronger than he appeared to be. Recovering from small wounds like those the tools inflicted was one thing. Withstanding tier 5 spells was another. The lich had deceived his captor hoping that Rat Pack would find the courage to step in the fight. The moment the lich and the shaman came into contact, they started a tug of war for the control over the undead energies trapped inside the orc's body. 1 second the lich looked almost human, with pink skin covering his face and pretty clothes over his body, whereas the orc was once again a bald, tall brute. The next moment, Zalgrish was reduced to 2 arms connected to his skull only by the shoulders, and Danka looked more magnificent than ever. The world energy would burst out of his body, forming a crown of pure mana above his head and making his skin shine as he had turned into a god. "Oh crap," Zalgrish said. He hadn't realized that the channel he had opened between the shaman and him could go both ways. Even though the undead energy well remembered his touch, now that they were so close, Danka could use his crystal ring to steal the little life essence that the lich had left. "Rat Pack, Zalma, I need help," he said. Unluckily, Rat Pack had run out of courage, and Lith had his plate full. "Damn it, do you want to dance? Fine, but I'll lead." The moment Zalgrish regained the upper hand, he warped them away. Yasmo was still busy dealing with Lith, but after the Lich's call for help, he had noticed how dangerous his situation was. If Zalbrish managed to strip the undead energies from Danka, he would be the next. If it was the Orc Shaman to emerge victorious, they would no longer be equal and the Baylor's fate would be sealed anyway. He ignored Lith's setting sun and darted forward to stop Danka, but the Lich beat him to the punch, moving his fight to an unknown location. A searing pain spread from the Baylor's light wing as Lith pierced it with his spell. If I'm right, as long as he has all 6 wings, he should be able to use some kind of invigoration by absorbing the 6 elements that make up the world energy. To gain an edge, I must cripple his recovery abilities. Without his light wing, all the damage I inflict to him will be permanent, and he will be unable to recover his mana too. 2 birds with 1 stone. Lith thought. Yasmo couldn't agree more. His conceited expression was replaced by worry as the thorn made of black flames turned most of the white feathers into ashes. He turned around to protect his exposed back, but Lith managed to follow his movements thanks to air fusion. The Baylor yelled in outrage, realizing his mistake. His power was unmatched, but he couldn't cast spells against someone outside his line of sight. Chapter 550. A Baylor's body was unable to channel mana. It was one of the reasons why millennia ago such a powerful race had attempted to force their evolution and ended up joining the ranks of the fallen races. Unlike all other creatures, they could conjure spells only through their eyes, making it vital for them to always face their opponents. Their other biggest limitation was their inability to cast spells above Tier 3. The highest tiers of magic required to fuse and manipulate multiple elements at will, while each one of the Baylor's eyes could only handle one specific element. Activating more than one eye at a time was possible, but they were unable to cooperate. The only exception was the creation of hard constructs, like weapons or armors made from ice. They could be infused with multiple elements, but always one at a time. Baylors couldn't use gravity magic, dimensional magic, nor complex arrays. They were unstoppable soldiers on the battlefield, yet as a race, they had been dependent on others for the creation of even the simplest enchanted item. Yasmo activated his red eye, turning all the agonizing monsters lying on the floor into cinders. Their corpses turned into spheres of smoke that orbited around the amplifier. The device started to reconstruct their bodies at a speed visible at the naked eye. Then, the Baylor activated his yellow wing, obtaining the same effects of air fusion. The sudden boost in speed allowed him to escape from Lith and put some distance between them. Lith cursed when he noticed that Yasmo was capable of using his white eye to slowly regenerate the white wing, yet his mood improved when he noticed that the mana it stored wasn't being replenished. It seems that wings and eyes are connected, Lith thought. Indeed. Unlike Trouble, Yasmo's eyes cannot accumulate world energy on their own. A wounded wing means he cannot recharge the corresponding element. We can't allow him to buy even 1 second. Solus pointed out. Lith darted forward, using a flight spell to match the opponent's speed. The Baylor was forced to interrupt his healing spell to activate his yellow wing. It allowed him to negate Lith's air magic and unleash the lightning bolts he had previously stored. Or so he believed. After fighting Thrud, Lith had spent hours learning how to infuse his will even inside low-tiered spells, so Yasmo's attempt to slow him down failed. The focus needed to succeed prevented Lith from retaliating to the incoming lightning pillar, but he didn't need to. Solus opened a small warp steps in front of them, which redirected the massive spell against the amplifier. The adamant it was made of and the enchantments protecting it resisted the assault, but the monsters surrounding it weren't so lucky. They had yet to regain half of their bodies that they were once again reduced to smoke and ashes. Nice artifact, human. I have some too, Yasmo said. A small silver sphere in his right hand shone with the intensity of a small sun as he launched himself against the enemy. Lith was aware of the enormous gap in physical strength between them, but time wasn't on his side. Stalling meant giving the Baylor the opportunity to recover his light wing and his minions. To add insult to injury, I don't know if Zalbrish will prevail. I might be able to deal with one of those reverted monsters at a time, but if they team up, I'll be forced to leave. I'm greedy, not idiotic, he thought. Lith had noticed several completed artifacts still lying on the forges. If the Lich failed his mission, Lith was willing to collect everything he could on his way out as compensation. Lith dodged to the side, avoiding a head-on clash with the Baylor, and cast another Tier 5 spell, Stormnado. It was a mix of air and darkness that conjured a thunderstorm of poisonous gas. The destructive mass of energy and the lab defenses clashed as Lith made sure the amplifier was caught in the area of effect of his spell, delaying the reverted monster's resurrection even longer. Yasmo appreciated Stormnado's prowess, considering the pain it inflicted him like a foretaste of the power he would wield once he completely assimilated the Lich's essence. His plan was now actually twofold. If before his aim was to undo his own fallen state and overcome his ancient limitations, capturing Lith would open endless possibilities to him. If I can steal the secret of awakening, Danka will be no match for me. Both my body and magic are superior to his. If not for him being an awakened, I would have long had him under my heel, he thought. Yasmo activated his yellow and black wing, but this time he didn't try to absorb Lith's spells. He instead reverted the flow, sending mana from his eyes to his wings and making the corresponding elements in the world energy unstable. No matter how much Lith focused nor the amount of mana he pumped into Stormnado, the spell waned as the two elements composing it became unable to coexist. What's happening? Lith took the gatekeeper out of his pocket dimension. His flight spell failed him too, and he couldn't afford to waste more mana. It must be what Zalgrish talked us about. A reverted Baylor can not only drain the world energy through their wings, but they can also use their stored mana to upset the balance and disrupt our magic. To cast an air or darkness spell, you have to counterbalance the distortion Yasmo caused. Solus said. Easier said than done. Damn Lich, stirring the world energy my pale ass. This is jamming. Lith didn't like his odds. The Baylor's spell seemed to be unaffected by the mana distortion, making him apparently even more dangerous than the Orc Shaman and his crystal. Lith infused himself with all the elements and prepared for the worst. Yasmo's eyes lit up one after the other, emitting highly compressed elemental beams. Lith dodged with a roll, but the beams kept following him wherever he moved. They were so powerful that even the blue translucent barrier protecting the library couldn't keep up. Only the presence of a second barrier below the first one prevented the precious tomes from being destroyed. Stop running. I need you alive, not healthy, Yasmo said as his eyes darted along the room to follow Lith's irregular footwork. Despite his words, every one of his attacks had been aimed to Lith's vitals. Any brilliant ideas? Lith was almost out of breath. Escaping on foot from a flying enemy while dodging the elemental beams was a mammoth task. Yes, don't get caught. I don't like how he keeps that shining sphere at hand, Solus replied. The good news is that between his jamming and his unrelenting attack, Yasmo is almost out of darkness and air magic. Lith didn't find any solace in her words. 3 or 5 rays made no difference to him. The Baylor only needed one to kill him. Lith took cover behind the amplifier, hoping that the enemy wouldn't take the risk of damaging it. He was right. His move caught Yasmo by surprise, forcing him to spin like a top to look away from the priceless device. Lith managed to get a single breath worth of energy from invigoration before the Baylor resumed the chase, but it was enough.